Welcome to this new video by Simplilearn. PMP or Project Management Professional is a global recognized certification for project managers. It is awarded by the Project Management Institute or PMI and validates knowledge and skills required for successful project management. PMP covers 5 domains: initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control, and closing. Obtaining PMP certification demonstrates your expertise in project management and enhances your career prospects in various industries. So let's take a small tour to know what Simplilearn's PMP certification or postgraduate program in project management has for you. This project management certificate program will cover strategization and management, project program, risk, quality, complexity management, customer-centric digital transformation, PMO implementation, and Agile and Scrum skill, and allow you to learn 146 professional development units or PDUs for maintaining CCR for PMI certifications. A few features of this program includes 8 times higher live interaction in live online classes by industry experts, capstone projects for 3 domains, 4 Harvard case studies, 17 hands-on projects and 15 plus simulation exams, 100% money-back guarantee, and Simplilearn's Job Assist help you to get noticed by top hiring companies. With certification, you will have all the important skills like project management, agile management, project risk management, quality management, Lean Six Sigma Green Belt training, digital transformation, design thinking, customer experience and design, and leadership skills. PMP certifications open up a wide range of job opportunities in the field of project management. With PMP, you can pursue roles such as project manager, program manager, portfolio manager, PMO manager, and more. PMP certified professionals are in high demand across various industries including IT, construction, healthcare, finance, and manufacturing, among others. PMP jobs often come with the competitive salaries and offer opportunities for career growth and advancement. A PMP certified project manager gets a 20% higher salary in comparison to a non-certified project manager. PMP salaries in India can range between 12 lakh rupees per annum and 17 lakh rupees per annum. Whereas in US, it ranges between $52,000 to $1,30,000 per year. Join us on this journey to enhance your project management expertise and boost your career prospects. So without any further ado, let's begin.
So what is project management? Now, as defined in PMI's PMBOK, project management is application of knowledge, skills, tools and techniques to project activities to meet project requirements. So every project will have an objective to accomplish. Similarly, the objective of project management is to make the final deliverables in a finite time and budget. This involves having clear understanding about the deliverables of the project, required resources for the project, resource in terms of human resources, technical resources, financial resources, etc. Project manager should have a full picture of those aspects. We can call it as constraints or aspects and manage those throughout the project life cycle, for which a project manager should have a full view about a project and what is that this project has to accomplish. That objective should be clear. So as part of project management, the 6 constraints which project managers should look at are scope, time, quality, cost, risk and resources. So each of these areas has very important role to play in project management. The clarity in scope, the clarity in terms of schedule within which the project has to be delivered, the cost, what it incurs to that particular project. Once it is finalized, one cannot vary, one cannot change without any proper approvals. Similar to that, we have quality management, which has to ensure the scope, the specifications, what are defined, project output will be accordingly achieved. Risk, every project is taken up for a specific reason by organization. So organization should assess the risk associated with the project, and similarly as project progresses, various different risks has to be identified, like risk related to project management, risk related to technology area, risk related to resources, risk related to financial things. So broadly, risk management plays a very important role. So there will be something called contingency reserve kept for a identified risk above the cost what is estimated for various deliverables from the project. So every project require resources. Resources may be in terms of human resources, financial resources, technology resources, environmental resources. So all these resources are used to produce the output of the project. So these resources has to be managed with the sufficient optimization and standardizations required. Now let us understand the definition of a project. So what is a project? PMI defines a project as a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service or result. The temporary nature of a project indicates that a project has a definite beginning and end. So when I say product, unique product, it means every output, it may be similar products you are producing with the same features and functionality. But the output of every project is unique because it is unique in terms of all the 6 constraints what we just discussed now. Now when I say product, it is very easy for us to visualize. It may be a desktop, it may be a laptop, it may be a car, it may be a machine, etc. But how do I visualize a service? Now project's output is a service. Now it's about building a capability. A project through a project, a capability can be built to ensure services can be provided. That's what the output of project is, service. For example, if I think about a taxi services, for providing a taxi services, I need a mobile app, I need taxi, I need a server, I need a data center. So all these are various different products and services. Here service example can be internet service. So combination of all these services and products builds the capability for an organizations who can provide the taxi services. So building that capability, we say it is an output of a particular project which is called service. Similarly, results can be improvement of something, improvement in customer satisfaction, increase in some specific objectives or specific results needs to be achieved in performance perspective. So output of every project will be unique product or a service or a result. This we need to clearly understand. So when we say there is a definite beginning and end, every project starts at a certain point in time and ends at certain point in time. So it has a definite beginning and end. That is the reason it is temporary in nature. It is not an ongoing business activity.
Before we begin, let's have a look at an incident where two project managers, John and Ted, are talking to each other. John is a senior project manager while Ted is a part of his team. John finds Ted to be upset, so he asks him is there anything he can help him with, to which Ted replies that his project failed. John further asks him what could be the possible reason for the project failure. Ted tells him that it's because he was not able to manage the time and budget. Now John asks him if he is PMP certified, to which Ted says he isn't. Then John suggests Ted that he must take the PMP certification, which will not only give his project better performance but also help him upskill in his career. So today we will discuss about PMP certification in detail. Let's first have a look at all the topics we will cover. We will begin with what is PMP, then we will check top 10 reasons to get PMP certified, followed by the basics of PMP. Then after we know the PMP basic concepts, we will check who can get this certification and pattern for the PMP exam. Then we will learn about the PMBOK guide, which is an integral part to prepare for the PMP exam. Finally, we will see the cost and the validity of the certification. So without any further ado, let's begin with what is PMP. PMP, or Project Management Professional, is the world's most renowned project management certification for project managers. This certification is provided by the Project Management Institute. Now, when we know what is Project Management Professional or PMP certification, let's have a look at some reasons why you should get PMP certified. Today, I will give you top 10 reasons to take PMP certification. PMP certification helps you become a better project manager. The process that helps us acquire the certification goes to several phases like gaining project management experience and passing the PMP exam, which helps you in bringing sanity to the project manager. The process helps project managers to learn different industry trends, have practical knowledge, and several other project management constraints. The second reason that we have is project management certification makes a resume more valuable. As we have discussed earlier, that PMP certification is the most renowned project management certification, so having it on the resume will definitely help the interviewer recognize our skills. There are companies that only accept project managers who are PMP certified. PMP certification not only helps in switching the job or finding a new one, it helps in progressing in the current company as well. The third reason that we have is it provides more job opportunities. When one acquires the PMP certification, it proves that one has expertise in completing the project effectively and efficiently. So the certification increases the trust factor of the interviewer in you and increases your probability of getting that job. The fourth reason that we have is salary hikes. PMP certified project manager is one of the highest paid jobs around the globe, and this trend will continue to grow. The global survey by the Project Management Institute shows that PMP certified project managers tend to get 20% more salary than the non-certified project managers. The next reason that we have is PMP certification validates your dedication to the job. The certification requires several months of training. It requires several hours of project management experience and exposure. This experience and exposure explains the seriousness of a project manager towards its career path. Then, sixth we have is PMP certification is globally acknowledged. PMP certification is the most renowned certification all over the world. It helps project managers to be a part of different types of industries all over the globe. PMP certification is the most renowned certification all over the world. Project managers who are PMP certified may get jobs in different types of industries all over the world. PMP certification not only provides theoretical knowledge but also helps in gaining practical knowledge, which further helps in increasing the confidence of a project manager. The next reason that we have is better project performance. PMP certified project managers tend to deliver better projects than the non-PMP certified project managers. This is because PMP certified project managers are well aware of 5 process groups, 10 knowledge areas, and 49 processes, which helps them have a clear picture of different aspects involved in a project. The eighth reason that we have is it increases your networking opportunities. There are several communities that one becomes a part of when they sign up as a PMI member. These communities have meetings regarding new job opportunities, and this helps in having a professional network. The ninth reason that we have is job security. Job security is a major reason that a professional thinks of before opting for a particular profession. Today, in the world of recession, where companies are drowning, the demand for PMP certified project managers goes on increasing. The last and the 10th reason we have is expertise in practical application. When one appears for a PMP exam, they need extensive preparation. They need to have thorough knowledge of process groups and knowledge areas, which help them develop several essential skills and move ahead in their career. Now, as we move further, we will look into the PMP basic concepts. The PMP basic concepts are the 5 project management steps. These project management steps start from the day we begin our project to the day we end our project. They begin from initiation to closure. The first step that we have is initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and controlling, and closure. Now, let's have a look at each of them in detail. The first step we have is initiation. Initiation involves defining the project scope. This is the step where we explain what our project will have, for whom we are making that project. It helps us to identify our stakeholders, who all will be the part of that project, and determine the project feasibility. After the step of initiation, when we have decided the scope of our project, the second step that comes is planning. In the planning phase, we define a flow to all the activities of a project. We define this flow keeping in mind all the constraints of a project like time, resources, and risk. After we have defined the flow of these processes, it is time for us to look at the execution. In the execution phase, we evaluate the plan and the sequence of the tasks we have made. We finally put the plan in action and the project tends to start. After the project building has started and the process of execution has started, it is time for the monitoring and the controlling phase. In monitoring and controlling phase, the progress of the project is tracked and important steps for quality assurance are taken. In monitoring and controlling phase, the work being done is compared with the work as defined in the project plan. In this phase, the progress of the project is tracked and important steps for quality assurance are taken. Finally, we have the closure step. In this step, the deliverables are delivered to the client, the documentation of all that took place during the project lifecycle is done, and project is fully evaluated. Now, when we have seen reasons for getting PMP certified and we know the basic concepts of PMP, it is time for us to know who can get PMP certified. For getting PMP certified, there can be 2 cases. The first case says you must have a secondary degree. A secondary degree means high school diploma or an associate degree or a degree that is globally equivalent to all of these. Then you need to have 7,500 hours of leading and directing projects and 3,500 hours of project management education. There can be 2 cases. First case can be you must have a secondary degree. That means a high school diploma, associate's degree, or the global equivalent degree. Then you must have 7,500 hours of project management experience and 35 hours of education in project management. The second case can be you must have a 4-year degree, along with 4,500 hours of project management experience and 35 hours of education in project management. Now, when we know who can get PMP certified, we will see the PMP exam pattern. The exam comprises of 200 questions, out of which 175 questions are used for evaluation. One can answer these questions if they have thorough knowledge of 5 process groups and 10 knowledge areas. The time provided to complete the exam is 4 hours. The questions that are asked are of different types, the most common type being formula-based, situation-based, and knowledge-based. Now, when we have discussed about the exam pattern, discussing about the PMBOK guide becomes very important. So the next topic that we have is PMBOK guide. PMBOK guide or project management body of knowledge is a book that comprises of several processes and different terminologies needed to crack the PMP exam. The whole syllabus of PMP exam is covered in the PMBOK guide by the project management and 10 knowledge areas. Apart from this, there are 49 processes that are divided amongst 5 process groups, 10 knowledge areas. Finally, let's have a look at the cost and validity of the PMP certification. When we talk about the cost of the certification, there can be two cases. The first case can be if we are not a member of Project Management Institute, the exam fees is $555. The second case can be if we are a member of Project Management Institute, the exam fees is $405. If we talk about the validity of the certification, the certificate is valid for a period of 3 years. After every 3 years, the certificate needs to be renewed. To renew the certificate, one needs to furnish a proof of 60 PDUs or professional development units. After so much information, Ted thanks John for his time and promises to take the PMP certification at the shortest notice. Now, let's have a look at the salary trends of a PMP certified project manager and a sample resume. If we consider the salary of a non-PMP certified project manager, it is approximately $91,000, while if we consider the salary of a PMP certified project manager, it is approximately $111,000, which is approximately 20% higher than the non-certified project manager's salary. Now, let's have a look at the resume of a PMP certified project manager. If you are somebody with PMP certification and looking for a project manager or a senior project manager role, your resume should look something like this. The summary in the beginning would include how much experience you have and anything that supports your claim of being a project manager. Like here, James Brown has written, he has more than 10 years of experience with generating and building projects. Then, when you talk about your experience, you should put something that emphasizes on the responsibilities that you had, your area of expertise, put something that shows your skill set for the desired post, and also something that you learned from your former job role. This shows that you have command over your work and also the determination to skill and upskill yourself. Like here, James Brown has 3 years of experience as an assistant manager training new associates and then more than 3 years of experience as a project manager where he not only led projects but also learned new project management tools like Trello and Primavera. After this, add relevant information regarding your education. Your resume must include skills that you have or you have gained in your years of experience. Like here, James Brown has divided his skills into 2 parts, where he has written his technical skills and non-technical skills. He has included a skill of agile and quality assurance software, as well as he has his knowledge of different project management tools. Then putting your certifications play a major role. This proves that you are up to date and updated with current market trends. James Brown has his certifications in C and Java, and more importantly, he has his project management certification, project management professional. Here's Max, an assistant project manager who looks tensed and is pacing around the room. Then Jack, a project manager who works with him, walks into the room and asks him, why does he seem so tensed? To which Max replies, he's facing difficulty in estimating the budget. Jack responds, it might be because he's not planning the project properly. Jack reassures Max and begins to tell him about project planning. So without any further ado, let's begin with what is project planning. Project planning is the second step or phase of the project life cycle. Project life cycle has 5 different phases from initiation to closure. Today, we will be learning about this phase that comes immediately after initiation, in which the project plan is documented and further requirements are defined. Project planning includes the following things. The first and the foremost thing is describing the objectives or outputs we are expecting the project to yield. Second, we have is the elaboration of the scope to make sure what the project is all about and what all can be expected from the project. The third step we have is forming a schedule. This schedule is important to run or perform different tasks of a project, each task having its own start date and end date. This helps the project to finish in the scheduled time and limit. Lastly, we have making and generating progress reports, in which all that went during the tenure of the project is documented. This helps in evaluating the project and helps in the forthcoming projects. Now, let's have a look at the project planning fundamentals. The first fundamental that we have is the determination of scope, cost, and resources. Their determination helps us in having a rough estimate about the time that is required to finish the project. It helps us in determining the number of people required and what should be their skill set. We can divide the project into smaller manageable sections, and this is made possible with the help of work breakdown structure. The second fundamental refers to identifying the problem. There are several techniques by which we can collect information and discover issues. There may be several problems in a project, and in that case, several risks or issues are prioritized, and the risk that requires immediate attention is dealt with first. Then comes identification of stakeholders. When we can identify the stakeholders, we can know who all will be affected and in what way, which helps us having a better understanding of the project. Stakeholders may be anybody. They may be the part of the project team, or project managers, or customers. They help during the project and contribute to its success. Then the last fundamental we will discuss is defining project objectives. A project plan is made keeping in mind the requirements of the project team and expectations of the stakeholders. If the project team can meet the expectations of the stakeholders, then only we can say that the project is successful. Now, when we know about project planning and its fundamentals, it's time to see why project planning is so important. Project planning reduces the cost and time of the project as every step is monitored and optimized in the best possible manner. Project planning increases employee satisfaction as every employee who is a part is engaged in the team for improved project performance. Project planning helps in the implementation of quality assurance as the output of every step is duly tested. Lastly, project planning helps in reducing project risk as planning helps to analyze, prioritize, and deal with that risk. Moving on, let's have a look at the tools for project planning. The first tool that we have is a Gantt chart. Today, Gantt charts are one of the most popular project management tools. They help in tracking the status of the work at a particular time and their dependencies on each other. Gantt charts help in showing different phases and steps involved in a project. The second tool we will talk about is Critical Path Method or CPM. Critical Path Method helps in scheduling the project activities so that the project runs properly. The Critical Path Method focuses on the longest stretch of dependent tasks and determines the time needed to complete them. The next tool is Project Evaluation and Review Technique or PERT chart. PERT provides a graphical representation of the project's timeline, explaining the interdependencies of different tasks. This tool not only helps in making a schedule, but also helps in coordinating with all the team members. The fourth tool we will check is Work Breakdown Structure. Work breakdown structure is a very common tool that makes it possible for the team to break its work into manageable sections. Work breakdown structure is a step-to-step process that helps in completing the project efficiently. The last tool we will see is project documentation. Project documentation is an integral part of the project lifecycle. Project documentation helps in understanding the mistakes done during the project and, more importantly, provides guidelines for the upcoming project. Now, when we know about different tools for project planning, it becomes essential that we know the necessary steps of project planning. There are 7 steps in project planning. Let's have a look at each of them in detail. The first step is identification of stakeholders. As we have discussed, stakeholders could be anybody. They could be a part of the team or a project manager or a customer. When we identify stakeholders, we can find out the expectations and requirements that are to be looked upon in this project. This gives us a clearer picture of the project and helps in establishing the project scope. So the next step we have is defining the project scope. This helps in determining a list of specific project goals and deliverables that are to be achieved during the course of the project. After we have defined the project scope, it is time to set project objectives and prioritize them. The initial ideas that were there before are now elaborated, and final steps to complete the project are defined. In the next step, the deliverables are determined. After all, project deliverables are the only reason why the project is being created. This step involves finding out what these deliverables will be and the deadlines of their delivery. Then the step that comes into picture is creating a project schedule. The project schedule refers to the guidelines when a particular task is to be started and when it is supposed to end. This helps in monitoring the growth of the project and later helps in generating progress reports. The next step is the step of risk analysis. This step plays an extremely important role in the success of the overall project. It helps in identifying the risk, prioritizing them, and taking steps to limit them. The last step in project planning is to generate progress reports. In this step, we update the stakeholders about the project growth, and it is done so that all the concerned team members can have a look at the progress of the project. After all this information, Max thanks Jack for the explanation and looks forward to plan projects within the budget and of better quality. Now, let us learn about project management in Excel. Microsoft Excel is one of the most common applications these days. It is used in both offices and at homes. Microsoft Excel is an easy project management tool that allows the team members to easily see the tasks in a project, develop a plan, and track its progress. Before we learn more about project management in Excel, let's first have a look why do we use Excel. Microsoft Excel is an easy tool to plan a project, so it can be used by people who are beginners in terms of project management. In Excel, one can find several analytical tools like concatenate, len, and counter, so this makes data analysis easy and effective. As the entry of data is easy, same is tracking and controlling of project status. Then, there are several project management templates in Excel that help us to have an effective distribution of project data. We will be checking several project management templates towards the end of this video. Now, let's have a look at the process of making a Gantt chart in Excel. Before we begin this, it's important we know what is a Gantt chart. A Gantt chart is like a horizontal bar chart that is used for project management. With the help of a Gantt chart, we can check the status of the task, the date they start, the date they end, and their dependencies on each other. Gantt chart helps in coordinating and monitoring different tasks in a project. Now, let's have a look at the steps that will help us in making a Gantt chart. First step we have is make a project table. We have several rows and columns. Like here, we have 3 columns. In the first column, we have the tasks. In the second, we have a start date. And in the third column, we have the duration or tenure of the task. The second step is to make a bar chart in Excel. For this, we will select the entire second column. Then we will go on the Insert tab and click on the bar graph chart. There, we can select stacked bar graph in 2D bar charts. As a result, we will have the entitled bar graph on the screen. In the third step, we will add the duration to the bar graph. We will right click on the chart and in the menu that appears, we will select Data option. A window that appears on the screen. In that window, we will select Add option as shown. We can also see the start date is already in the entry section. Then in the dialog box that appears, type tenure in the series name and click on the range selection icon that's shown in the figure. Now select the relevant data from the tenure column and click on OK. Now we can see a bar graph that has 2 colors on the screen. This bar graph now has the duration of the tasks. The fourth step we have is adding description to the Gantt chart. Now we will open the box again and in that box we will select the edit option as shown in the figure. Then we will select the tasks as we had selected the duration of the tasks before and click on OK. We can now see the tasks have appeared towards the left side of the Gantt chart. The fifth and the remarkable step will help us convert this bar graph into a Gantt chart. We will now click on the bars and select the Format Data Series option from the menu that appears. Then in the Format Data Series dialog box, we will select No Fill option. We can find our Gantt chart on the screen now in accordance with the data that we had entered. Now we can see the tasks on the left side are in the reverse order. So what we will do next is, we will click on the task panel, then go to the Format Access dialog box and select the categories in reverse order option. Now we can find the tasks in the right order. One more thing we can notice is Gantt chart is starting with some other date and not with the dates that we had entered. So for this, we will copy the first date in some other cell, then clicking on the copied cell, we will go to the home menu to select the dialog box as shown in the figure. Then in that drop down menu, we will select the number option. We can now find a value displayed in the copied cell. We will copy that value, click on the dates on the chart, and as the Format Access dialog box opens, we will paste that value in the box that says minimum shown in the figure. As a result, we will have our final Gantt chart on the screen. In the last step, we can give several designs to a Gantt chart, change colors, and make it more presentable for us. Now when we know the basic steps of making a Gantt chart, I will show that practically to you in Microsoft Excel. Our first step is to open Microsoft Excel, and in Microsoft Excel, we will make a project table. In a project table, we will have 3 columns. The first column will be task. The second column will have the start date. The third column will have tenure or the duration of the task. So beginning with tasks, we have task 1. In task 1, we have 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Then comes task 2. In task 2, we have 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4. Then we have task 3. In task 3, we will have 2 subsections, 3.1 and 3.2. Then we will start with the starting dates. In starting dates, we will put 1st January. The task 1.1 will be 1st of January. Then this will be 4th January. Let's say this is 5th January. Then we will put this as 11th of January. And this will be again 11th January only. This will be 15th January. Let's put this as 17th January. Let this be 19th January. Task 3 begins on 23rd January. And it The 3.2 section begins at 26th of January. Now let's put the tenure or the duration of the task. We will begin with task 1. It takes 12 days. Then 1.1 takes 7 days. We say this takes 4 days and this takes 8 days. Then for task 2, it again takes 12 days. It takes 5 days, 5 days, and let's say this takes 6 days and this takes 4 days. Then we come to task 3. This takes 8 days and let's say this takes 6 days and the 3.2 section takes 5 days. So this is how our project table is ready. In the second step, we will select the entire second column. After we have selected this column, we will go to the Insert tab. In the Insert tab, we'll go to the bar columns, and in this, we will select 2D stacked bar charts. Now we have the entitled bar chart in accordance to our data on the screen. Then comes the third step. We will add the duration of the tasks to the bar graph. We will click on the chart, and after we click on the chart, we will select Select Data option. In the Select Data Source dialog box, we find the start date is already there. Now we will click on Add, and after we click on Add, in the series name section, we will put tenure. Then in the series value, we will click on this icon and select the entire tenure series and click on OK. So this is the bar graph that we have now. This is now in two colors, the orange color and the blue color. This bar graph now has the duration of all the tasks in our project table. Now in the fourth step, now it's time for us to add description to our Gantt chart. Instead of this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we will put task 1, task 2 and the subtasks. So what we will do is, we will again go to that box, we will left click on the Gantt chart, select the Select Data option, and then we'll go to the start date. Here, we'll select the Edit option. In the Edit option, we will select all the tasks and click on OK. Now we can see all the tasks are aligned towards the left of the bar chart. As we can see, this is a bar chart or a bar graph and not a Gantt chart. The next step we have is converting this bar graph into a Gantt chart. So we will click on the bars and select the Format Data Series option from the menu that appears. Here we have this Format Data Series option. Now we can see the dialog box on the screen. Here we'll go into the color section, fill section, and then we will select no fill. Now we can see the blue lines have disappeared. So this looks like a Gantt chart. So now when we have a Gantt chart on the screen, we can notice that the tasks here are in the reverse order. So what we will do is, we will click on these tasks and select the Format Axis option. Here, we will select Categories in reverse order. We can see our Gantt chart is now in order, like we have our task 1 on the top and task 3 at the bottom. The dates are starting from 11th of December, but the dates we have provided are from 1st of January. Now we will copy this cell, then go on the dates box. Here, we'll go to Format Axis. In the Format Axis, we can see minimum. In this minimum, we will paste this value and press enter. As we press enter, we can see our Gantt chart starting from the date that we wanted to start, and that too in the correct order, starting from task 1 to task 3. Now as a result, we have our final Gantt chart on the screen. In the last step, what we can do is make our Gantt chart more representable. We can change the color of these bars, we can give them shapes, and we can do many other things to make it more presentable. We will first select the bars. Like what we will do is, we will select task 1 and let's say we give it the color blue. Then task 2, we will give it color green, and in task 3, we'll give it the color black. So here the subsections will give different colors to the subsections as well. Then we come to task 2.1. This is how we can change the color of these cells, or apart from changing colors, we can select a bar graph and do the gradient fill. So this is how we can make a Gantt chart more presentable. After changing the colors or changing the shapes, we have our final Gantt chart on the screen. Finally, let's have a look at some Microsoft Excel templates for project management. Microsoft Excel templates help in collecting data, putting them into order, and check their dependencies with each other. With the help of these templates, we can monitor the status of the tasks, and we can also check the progress our project has made. Moving forth, we will check some important Microsoft Excel templates. The first template we have is Excel Project Review template. This template helps us have an overview of the project. We can have a clear understanding of all the tasks that are planned and that are completed. This helps project managers to measure the progress of the project and take further steps accordingly. Second template we will check is Excel budget template. In this template, we can monitor all the expenditures of our project. It helps us in managing the budget of a project and also helps in comparing the budget of a project at different phases. Let's have a look at the budget template in Excel once. We can download this template from officetimeline.com. The Gantt chart towards the right is in accordance with the dates towards the left. If we fluctuate the date, we can see the template working. The start date for task 1 could be changed to 10th June. If we change this date to 10 June, we can see the fluctuation in the Gantt chart. So this is how we can use this template directly. Let's have a look at the third template now. Third template we will see is Excel Sprint Project Tracker template. This template is used majorly in agile projects, where the project is made in several sprints or sessions. This template includes the start date, the end date, and the duration of each task. We can also see the percentage completed of each task. Let's have a look at the Sprint Project Tracker template as well. We can see the Gantt chart towards the right and the data towards the left. So if we change any data, we can see the Gantt chart changing. For example, we can change the data in Sprint 2 Feature 3. Let's change the start date to July 2nd. We can see the Gantt chart changing. This is how we can use this template directly to track our sessions. Let's have a look at the fourth Excel template. This template is Excel Project Tracker. In this template, we have the data of all the tasks with their status and owners. We can track the percentage of tasks completed and also compare the planned duration of the task to the actual duration of the task. After the critical part tracker, let's check the Excel Project Schedule template. This template helps in effective management of the project as it helps in monitoring the time that each task of the project takes. It provides a clear view of all the work associated with the project. Let's have a look at this template in Excel once. We can see the Gantt chart in accordance to the data. If we change the estimated hours at two places, let's say at the design review, we make it 15 hours instead of 5 hours. And at the create staffing plan, we make it 2 hours instead of 20 hours. We can see the Gantt chart fluctuating. This is how we can use this template to manage the schedule in a project. Moving forward, the next template we will see is Excel Project Status Report template. This template helps us having a list of project deliverables and the risks associated with that project. This template helps the project managers about different crucial activities involved in a project. After this, we have Excel Milestone Tracker. The Milestone Tracker helps us in tracking or monitoring different tasks in a project. Project managers use this template to monitor the project performance with respect to the timelines. The last template we will see is Excel Project Planner. Excel Project Planner includes a list of tasks with the respected owners along with the start date and the end date of that task. This helps in monitoring each task and comparing the estimated task date with the actual ones. Let's have a look at this template in Excel. We can see the Gantt chart with respect to the data entered. Let's make changes at several places in the data. We can make this 22 to 24. We will make this 23 go to 2. And we can make this 5th September go to 15th September. And when we make the changes, we can realize the Gantt chart is fluctuating. So this is how we can use this template to plan a project effectively and efficiently.
If you are looking to become a skilled project manager, have a look at the postgraduate program in project management by Simplilearn.
A project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. For example, developing a new product, service, or result, constructing a building, industrial plant, or infrastructure, and implementing, improving, or enhancing existing business processes and procedures. In the next screen, we will focus on the characteristics of a project. A project can be distinguished based on its characteristics. The definition describes two characteristics of a project. First, it is temporary in nature. Temporary here does not mean short in duration. A project can extend for long duration based on the requirements. For example, creating a new indigenous missile defense system for a country. However, there is always a definite planned start and end date for a project. It cannot go on indefinitely. Secondly, the project is supposed to produce a unique output. The output could be a product, service, or result. There can be many common activities between two projects, but the outcome of each project should be unique in some way or the other. Now, let us look at what marks the end of a project. A project ends when either the objectives are met or the project is terminated because the objectives will not or cannot be met. The other reason to terminate the project can be that the need for the output of the project does not exist anymore. Usually, the sponsor of the project takes a call about the closure of the project. It is important to differentiate project work from regular operational work. For example, your office receptionist does the same work every day of picking any incoming call and directing the call to the right person in the office. This is an ongoing repetitive work and can be classified as operation. Operations, unlike projects, are neither temporary nor unique. Creating a new software system to effectively track your customer complaint can be an example of a project. When the software is successfully developed, the project objective is met, which marks the end of the project. When you start using this software to track customer complaints, you are entering into the operations phase. In the next screen, let us now look into project management. As defined in the PMP guide, project management is the application of knowledge, skills, and tools and techniques applied to project activities to meet the project requirements. Project management is achieved by proper application and integration of the 47 processes. Project application and integration means these processes should be executed in the right manner as well as in the right order. In the next screen, let us discuss how to manage a project. Program management is defined as the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to a program to meet the program requirements and to obtain benefits and control not available by managing projects individually. As defined in PMP Guide, a program is a group of related projects, which when managed as a group in a coordinated fashion, provides benefits and control that are not available while managing them individually. These benefits could be from decreased risk, economies of scale, improved management of dependencies, delivery of additional capabilities, optimal utilization of shared resources, and so on. Let us now learn the various features of program management. Random projects cannot be grouped together as a program. The projects in a program should be related in some way or the other, and there should be some value added in managing them together. A project may not be a part of any program, but a program will always have projects. A project can also be executed as a standalone project. A program is designed to deliver some strategic benefits value to the organization. These benefits can be tangible or intangible. Examples of tangible benefit could be increased profit margins or operational cost savings. Examples of intangible benefits could be improved team morale or building up certain competencies. While a project manager focuses relentlessly on the fulfillment of the project's requirements, that is, scope, cost, time, quality, a program manager needs to focus on ensuring that the organizational benefits are realized. In the next screen, let us understand what a portfolio is. Portfolio is yet another term used along with project and program. A portfolio may have multiple projects and programs that are managed as a group to achieve strategic objectives. Note that all projects and programs in a portfolio may not be necessarily interdependent or directly related. A portfolio can be created based on the business objectives. For example, an IT service company can have a portfolio named Japanese Projects, which is formed with an aim to take over the Japanese market by giving more attention to these projects. Within this portfolio, similar projects can be managed as a program, and all banking projects from Japan can be managed as a banking program. In the next screen, let us discuss portfolio management. Portfolio management is the centralized management of one or more portfolios. This includes identifying, prioritizing, authorizing, managing, and controlling projects, programs, and other related work to achieve strategic business objectives. Therefore, whether the company should have Japanese projects as portfolio or not is decided by portfolio management. In the next screen, let us understand the relationship between portfolios, programs, and projects. The image on the screen will help you to understand the terms portfolios, programs, and projects. A portfolio is part of an organization's overall strategy. It represents a conscious decision by an organization to invest in the portfolio. The overall objectives of a portfolio are then cascaded down to the lower-level components. The components could be sub-portfolios, programs, or projects. These components can further be broken down into smaller components for ease of management. Although a project may not contain operations, a program, or a portfolio, it can include other work. This other work may comprise training and development, customer support and services, etc. If the other work has synergy with the overall objectives and adds to the capability to deliver the higher-level benefits, then it can be included in the program or portfolio as well. In the next screen, we will discuss Project Management Office. Project Management Office, or PMO, is a specific type of body or department within an organization. PMO performs several roles in the organization, and these can broadly be classified as primary roles and other roles. Typically, the PMO may take up any one or a combination of the three primary roles. It provides the policies, methodologies, and tools and templates for managing projects within the organization. It provides support and training in organization on how to manage projects. And finally, it provides project managers for different ongoing projects in the organization. PMO may also help in managing interdependencies between the projects, selecting, managing, and deploying shared or dedicated project resources, if need be, terminating a project, and organizing lessons learnt sessions and maintaining the project management knowledge base for an organization. In the next screen, we will discuss how to manage the triple constraints. Any project can be done successfully if there is no constraint on time or there is unlimited budget available. Unfortunately, that is not true in real life. A project is performed within some constraint, and these constraints are usually competing. Therefore, if you change one, it would affect the other. For example, if the project duration increases, it would lead to increase in the project cost as well. Triple constraint is a term that originally referred to the three competing project constraints within which the projects are performed. These constraints are cost, time, and scope. Quality is a primary concern for a project manager. Therefore, the project manager has to make trade-offs to keep the scope, cost, time, quality plane in balance. To achieve the balance, the project manager also needs to manage other aspects of the project. For instance, the people, stakeholders, risks, communication, and procurements. The project manager plays the essential role of integrating all these different aspects of project management. In the PMP examination, you can expect business scenario-based questions focusing on the triple constraints. In the next screen, let us understand who a stakeholder is. A stakeholder can be defined as the one whose interests may positively or negatively be affected or perceived to be affected by the decision, activity, or outcome of the project. As per the definition, the project team, project manager, project sponsor, PMO office, customer, etc. are the stakeholders of the project. A project sponsor is the one who gives a go-ahead for a project and provides the necessary resources to execute the project. Therefore, the head of projects in the organization who provides a green signal to start a project and allocates required resources to the project is the project sponsor. A project sponsor is usually somebody placed high up in the organizational hierarchy of the performing organization, that is, the organization in which the work of the project is being carried out. In the next screen, let us look at stakeholder management. One of the key responsibilities of a project manager is to manage stakeholders. A project manager has to involve the stakeholders from the beginning of the project until the end, so they are aware of every step. A project manager has to take up specific activities for stakeholder management, identifying both internal and external stakeholders. Missing out any stakeholder can be disastrous for a project. A stakeholder who is identified towards the end of the project may come up with his own requirement at that stage, and incorporating them can be risky. Determining stakeholder requirements. After identifying all the stakeholders, the project manager also needs to ensure that their requirements are clearly identified. Sometimes, stakeholders might themselves not know of their requirement, and it is the job of the project manager to get them right by doing a proper stakeholder requirement analysis. Determining stakeholder expectations. Stakeholders might also have some unstated expectations, which need to be clarified to see if it can become a project requirement. It is again the role of the project manager to determine the stakeholder's expectation. Communicating with stakeholders. Once all the stated and unstated stakeholder requirements are known, the project manager, as part of stakeholder analysis, should focus on communicating them regularly to keep stakeholders involved in the project. Once you understand the practices of stakeholder management, it will be easier for you to answer scenario-based questions in the examination. In the next screen, let us look at the various organization structure. Projects are performed in an organization, and the functioning of the organization might affect the project. The different organization structure types explained here are based on the level of authority that a project manager gets into in those organizations. In a functional type of organization, the organization is grouped by the area of specialization within different functional areas. For instance, marketing, accounting, engineering, etc. are departments within the organization. Each employee typically reports to a functional manager. In such types of organization, normally projects are undertaken within the department itself. If a project requires any assistance from another department, the request moves from the head of the requesting department to the head of the concerned department. The team members do their normal departmental work in addition to the project work. The next type of organization is projectized organization. In such organizations, there are no departments. The organization's resources mostly work on projects. Team members report to a project manager. The project manager has complete control over the resources. When the project is completed, either they move on to another project or they look for some job outside the company. They do not have a department for themselves. The third type of organization is a matrix organization, which is a blend of functional and projectized organizational structure. A team member belongs to a department as well as they are part of a project team. In such organization, team members have two bosses. One, their department head, and the second, their project manager. Since there are two bosses here, this type of organization is further classified into three different types. They are weak, strong, and balanced matrix organization. So out of the two bosses that team members have in matrix organization, if the project manager has more authority over the team member, such organizations are called strong matrix. Where the functional manager has more authority, it's a weak matrix organization. If they both share equal authority, then it is a balanced organization. There is another term that you might find in the exam called tight matrix. This generally refers to a co-located team, that is, a team that has been placed in the same location to enhance their performance. In the PMP exam, if there is no mention of the organization type, you can assume it to be a matrix organization. Let us look at each of these organization structures in detail. In the next screen, let us look at functional organization. In a functional organization, the resources of the organization are grouped by functions, sometimes called departments. Examples of functions could be sales, finance, administration, manufacturing, etc. Each function plays a definite role in the organization and is headed by a functional head or supervisor. All the resources in such an organization report directly into their functions. Therefore, a salesperson would report into the sales organizational hierarchy, a purchase executive would report into procurement, and so on. You would notice that in a functional organization, the project manager's role is not explicitly called out. When a functional organization embarks on a project, each of the functions that are involved may volunteer some resources to work on the project. One of these resources may end up playing the project manager's role. The resource assignments may not even be full-time, and sometimes even the project manager is part-time. Since the project manager has no authority over any of the resources, they are dependent on the functional heads. This makes it more challenging for the project manager to coordinate in the team. However, functional organizations provide an opportunity for specialization. For example, if a purchase executive was reporting into the purchase department, that executive would have exposure to all the purchasing that happens within the organization and has a well-defined career path. In functional organizations, project management happens at the functional head level. Next, let us look at the projectized organization in the next screen. The projectized organization has all the resources aligned around projects. The project managers have complete control over the resources working on their projects. The biggest advantage of the projectized organization is that the resources have loyalty to their projects and project execution becomes easier. This kind of structure is suitable for organizations whose work is in the nature of projects. There are few disadvantages in this structure as well. Firstly, the role of the resource is over once the project is completed. Secondly, highly specialized roles within a project may not be fully occupied all the time. For example, a purchase executive may have work for selected periods on a project while purchase activities are going on. However, for the rest of the period, their capability may not be optimally utilized. There is less scope for functional specialization as the project boundaries limit the kind of work for the resources. Each project manager is in charge of a project and its resources. Next, let us look at the matrix organization. In a matrix organization, the resources report to the functional managers and are managed by the project managers as well. There might even be a function that represents all the project managers in the organization, which provides project management expertise. The matrix structure has three variants, commonly referred to as weak, balanced, and strong. In a weak matrix, the authority of the project manager is the weakest and strongest in a strong matrix structure. The titles given to project managers in functional or weak matrix organizations are Project Expediter or Project Coordinator. They would be called project managers in a balanced or strong matrix structure and have slightly more authority over the time of the team members. The advantage of the matrix structure is that resources can be optimally utilized while preserving the capacity of the project managers to get projects executed efficiently. Resources can specialize in their functions and have stability in their careers, also contribute to the projects at the same time potentially. The disadvantage of matrix organization is that the communication overhead increases significantly. This is because every resource in the organization belongs into a project and into a function, leading to a dual reporting structure. In a matrix organization, project management happens at project resource level. In the next screen, let us summarize the advantages and disadvantages of different organizational structures. Each organization structure has its own set of advantages and disadvantages. The advantage of functional organizations is that resources may find clearly defined career paths and achieve specialization and skill development in their respective fields. It will be a flexible workforce since only one manager will be responsible, avoiding confusion. The disadvantage of such organization type is that project work is hampered. Department work is always given higher priority than the project work. In addition, there is no career path in project management, which leads to lower interest in projects. In the case of the projectized organization, one of the clear advantages is better communication within the projects. Since project work is the only work team members are doing, it also leads to loyalty towards the project goals. The disadvantage of such organization type is the inefficient use of resources, because every project team has their own support function. Therefore, this might lead to the duplication of effort. It also leads to the resources being left with no work, since their roles are over once the project is completed. It also hampers skill development because the project requirements dictate what kind of work team members perform at different stages on a project. Now, let us look at the matrix organization. It also has the advantage of better coordination and maximum utilization of resources. However, the disadvantage is the higher potential for conflict among the managers, which might lead to communication complexity and overhead management. In the next screen, let us focus on the comparison on project lifecycle and product lifecycle. Project lifecycle spans the initiation of a project until the closure of the project. The product lifecycle, on the other hand, also encompasses the operational and maintenance phases. A typical product lifecycle starts with conception of the product and goes until its withdrawal from the market. The withdrawal might be because it becomes obsolete, or there is no further need for the product in the market. A product has a long life cycle. A product can require or spawn many projects over its life. For example, a project in product conception phase could be to determine customer needs, whereas a project during product maturity phase could be used to perform competitive analysis. Typically, a product lifecycle is longer than the project lifecycle. A project also has its own lifecycle, and this lifecycle depends upon the industry and the organization within which the project is being executed. Sometimes different organizations within the same industry use different lifecycles. There can be questions in the exam based on the comparison of project lifecycle and product lifecycle, so understanding the differences will be useful in answering such questions. In the next screen, let us discuss more on project lifecycle. A life cycle is composed of phases. Each phase represents a discrete unit of work required to be done on the project. There are different ways of classifying project life cycles. Let us first discuss the sequential versus overlapping life cycle. In sequential phases, the subsequent phase starts only after the previous phase has been completed, whereas in overlapping phases, two or more phases may run in parallel for some time. This could help fast-tracking and compressing the amount of time required. The other way of classifying life cycles is how they go about the process of planning. In predictive life cycles, there is a large upfront planning phase, where all the details of scope, cost, time are planned before beginning the subsequent phases. These phases then are executed in either sequential or overlapping modes. They are suitable for large projects where all the requirements are likely to be known in advance and where upfront planning effort is required to get the necessary approvals. Another feature of predictive life cycles is that each phase may potentially be different in the nature of activities and may require people with different skill sets. For example, traditional software development life cycle has phases like requirements, feasibility, planning, design, construction, testing, and transition. We will continue project life cycles in the next screen. Incremental and iterative life cycles have a short upfront high-level definition and planning phase. The product is then developed through a series of iterations, where iteration increments or adds to the functionality by a little. All the activities are intentionally repeated in iterations. Adaptive or agile life cycles are variants of incremental and iterative life cycles, where iteration is very short, typically 2 to 4 weeks. Agile methodologies are becoming very popular in the software development industry and in other industries where the requirements are highly changeable and frequent feedback is beneficial. Let us now check your understanding of the topics covered in this lesson. A project manager is supposed to fulfill a project's requirements, that is, to deliver a unique output in a timely manner. It starts in the form of an idea that is approved by a project initiator or sponsor. The project manager and the project team then elaborate their understanding of the requirements and produce the final deliverable, which can be a product, a service, or a result. Throughout the project management team needs to ensure that the stakeholders are engaged in the project and their expectations are being managed. The project management team also needs to ensure that there is good communication between the project team and the stakeholders. In addition, the team should make sure that the constraints of scope, cost, time, quality, and others are balanced. In addition to producing deliverables, a project generates data. Such historical data, archives, or records are important for planning future projects. There are 5 major process groups in project management. In the next screen, we will discuss how these process groups are related to each other. The 5 process groups in project management are initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing processes. The image shows how these process groups interact with each other. The initiating processes occur only once during a project or phase within a project, at the beginning, whereas the closing processes occur only once towards the end. However, planning, executing, and monitoring and controlling processes are repeated several times during a project. The planning processes take information from the initiating processes and help to prepare an initial baseline version of the plan. As the team starts execution, they understand the ground realities better. The deliverables produced and the data of the progress are fed into the monitoring and controlling process group. In the monitoring and controlling process group, the information generated during execution is processed and utilized in 3 different ways. Firstly, it can be used for revising the plan, which is termed as replanning. Secondly, it can be fed back into execution as defects or corrective and preventive actions or approved changes. And thirdly, the information can result in the cancellation of the project or the successful completion of the project upon validation of the deliverables produced. While discussing processes, consider it from the perspective of project manager or as part of the project management team. This implies that you are essentially functioning in the integration management knowledge area. The initiating process includes 2 steps, which include getting the project charter approved and identifying stakeholders. Click each tab to learn more. A project manager is concerned about getting the charter for the project approved. Project charter sets the beginning of the project, where the management has decided in its favor and is ready to commit resources for it. The other process in the initiating process group is identifying stakeholders. The project manager and the project team should know the stakeholders and their requirements, which is the starting point for planning. You may get concept-based questions in the PMP exam, so study the initiating process to answer such questions easily. Planning accounts for most of the processes in the project management framework. As many as 24 out of the 47 project management processes belong to the planning process group. The basic objective of the planning processes is to produce the project management plan collectively. The developed project management plan under integration management assimilates the output of all the planning processes under various knowledge areas. The project management plan is the collection of all subsidiary plans that address different aspects of the project. The project management team integrates all these plans and ensures that they are in harmony with one another. The team also prepares a blueprint of how the project needs to be executed, controlled, and closed. The planning process starts with scope planning, which is to understand exactly what you are trying to achieve. This is translated into a project scope statement, which can be decomposed into a work breakdown structure, or WBS, which forms the basis of other planning processes. Any change to the scope invariably has a bearing on other parameters that can affect the project. Following the same logic, it is easier to understand how the planning processes in other knowledge areas, such as quality, cost, and time, can influence the time that will be taken, the cost that will be incurred, and the way quality will be managed. To satisfy the scope, cost, time, and quality equilibrium, the project team needs to manage communications, risk, stakeholders, procurements, and human resources. This is where the planning processes under these knowledge areas come in. All these planning processes interact with each other. Planning is an interactive activity that gets elaborated, refined, and adjusted as more and more information about the project is discovered. Planning without execution is futile, but execution without planning is fatal. However, in execution processes, the project team spends a lot of time putting the plan into action. When you perform the executing processes, you often blend the execution and controlling processes. Execution is all about performing the plan that is producing the deliverables and providing information on the progress. Processing of this information and the validation of the deliverables is a control function. The executing process is the direct and managed project work, where the project manager essentially puts certain mechanisms in place to ensure that the work is being carried out. The project manager primarily focuses on ensuring that the procurements are conducted. These procurements are deliverables or services that the project needs to buy from external sources. The project manager also needs to ensure smooth flow of communication within the project team and with the external stakeholders. The manager should make sure that stakeholders are engaged in the project and that the processes for managing quality are being followed correctly. It is important for the project manager to make sure that the right team is being used. They have the knowledge and competencies to do the job, and they work together as a team. The project manager should also manage the team to make sure they are positioned for success. Monitoring is observing and getting data about how things are going within the project, whereas controlling is taking actions to bring things back on track. Monitoring and controlling apply to different aspects of project management. The image shows the various areas of project management where monitoring and control applies. However, the knowledge area that has a corresponding control process is human resources, because human resources should be managed, not controlled. An important aspect of controlling is having an elaborate mechanism to handle changes. Closing processes bring a project or a phase within the project to an orderly conclusion. Only two knowledge areas include a closing process. These are integration management and procurement management. Closing a project or a phase falls under integration management and applies to the overall project. Before the project is formally closed, all the procurements or contracts that are entered into for the project must be formally closed as well. Study the closing processes in detail to answer concept-based questions in the PMP exam.
If you are looking to become a skilled project manager, have a look at the postgraduate program in project management by Simplilearn.
There are 47 processes in project management, grouped into 10 knowledge areas and mapped to 5 process groups. In this lesson, we will look at the first knowledge area, that is, project integration management and its processes. In the next screen, let us understand the concept of project integration management. Project integration management involves unification, consolidation, articulation, and integrative actions that are crucial for successfully completing the project. The project integration management is high-level work that project manager does, and it involves managing interdependencies among the other knowledge areas. The other 9 knowledge areas involve detailed work in a specific direction. For example, project cost management deals only with how to manage cost in a project. The project management processes do not happen independently. For example, a new resource added to the project may require changes in cost or schedule or both. In dealing with such situations, the project manager integrates the processes of project management. The need for integration drives much of the communication and the work of the project manager. Let us discuss the key role of project manager, sponsor, and team in the next screen. Project manager, team members, and project sponsors have different roles to play in a project. The project manager is supposed to play multiple roles in the project. The key role is to perform integration. The project manager puts all the pieces of the project together into a cohesive whole. In doing so, the project manager tries to ensure that the project is done faster, cheaper, and utilizes resources optimally while meeting the project objectives. As the project progresses, the team members work on completing the project activities. The role of the project sponsor is to protect project from any unnecessary changes and to ensure that it has the required resources for completion. The project sponsor is the champion for the project within the performing organization, that is, the organization in which the work is being performed. In the next screen, we will cover the project selection methods. An organization can undertake a project under contract with an external organization or take up a project driven by internal business needs. There should be a formal process of selecting project in all organizations to ensure that it is making the best possible use of limited corporate resources. For example, if the organization has an option to take up any one out of the two projects, both of which use the same corporate resources, the organization would naturally select the one which is more profitable. There are two broad ways to select a project. One way is the benefit measurement method, where one project is compared with other competing projects. Another approach is based on mathematical models, wherein you examine the most optimal selection of projects by trying to optimize a goal. For example, maximize operating profits. Such methods may be called constrained optimization methods. There are different methods under both these categories, and you should be familiar with the names of these methods. Broadly, the benefit measurement methods focus on ascertaining the costs and benefits of undertaking the project. The methods under benefit measurement method include murder board, where a panel of experts shoots down a new project idea, peer review, scoring models, economic models, and benefit compared to cost. The constrained optimization methods rely on mathematical modeling techniques to determine the best selection of projects to achieve certain business objectives. The methods of constrained optimization method include linear programming. In reality, you might not have seen these methods to be followed in project selection. Often, personal relationship with the sponsor may be more important than anything else. This is quite normal, and any organization worldwide works this way. However, as a certified project manager, it is important for you to be familiar with more scientific methods of project selection. A typical question on the CAPM exam could be, what type of project selection technique is peer review? And the right answer is benefit measurement method. You need to understand the characteristics of various project selection methods to answer scenario-based questions. In the next screen, we will focus on the project selection methods. An organization has limited resources. They cannot execute all the projects that come their way. They can take only those projects for execution which are financially sound for the organization. There are various parameters used in making such decisions. Some of these terms are present value, net present value, internal rate of return, payback period, benefit cost ratio, return on investment, and opportunity cost. Click each tab to learn about the parameters. Present value is today's value of future cash flows. In order to reduce future cash flows to present values, a discount factor has to be applied. What this essentially means is, if a project can give a return of, say, $100 per year, $200 next year, and $250 the third year, what is the value of all these returns today? $250 return in the third year will not be the same as $250 today due to inflation or any other constraint. Click Close to go to the Process Selection Methods dashboard. Net present value, NPV, is the present value of the total benefits, income or revenue, less the costs over a time. Therefore, if multiple items are involved, add the present value of all of them to arrive at the net present value. Problems where a project has to be selected over other projects on the basis of their net present value can be expected in the exam. Let us take an example of a typical question that we might encounter in the exam. You have two projects to choose from. Project X will take 2 years to complete and has an NPV of $35,000. Project Y will take 5 years to complete and has an NPV of $95,000. Which one will you choose? The answer is Project Y because it has a higher NPV. Do not get confused with longer duration of the project. It is important that NPV be more. Click Close to go to the Process Selection Methods dashboard. Another term used in evaluating a project is Internal Rate of Return, or IRR. IRR is the rate of discounting at which the present value of costs matches the present value of benefits. It is the rate inherent in the project. Let us look at an analogy to understand the concept of IRR. Consider a project similar to depositing money in a bank account and earning interest. You will prefer the bank that gives maximum interest. Similar is the project. Choose from Project A and B, where Project A has an IRR of 25%, or Project B has an IRR of 15%. The answer is Project A, as the IRR is better for Project A. It is obvious, higher the IRR, the better. Click Close to go to the Process Selection Methods dashboard. Payback period is the number of time periods it takes to recover your investment in the project before you start making profit on the investment made in the project. You have 2 projects to choose from, Project A with a payback period of 5 months or Project B with a payback period of 12 months. Which one would you go for? The answer would be Project A. It is evident that lesser the payback period, the better. Click Close to go to the Process Selection Methods dashboard. Benefit-cost ratio is the ratio of the present value of benefits to the present value of costs. A benefit-cost ratio of more than 1 means that benefits are greater than the costs. If the benefit-cost ratio of Project A is 2.5 and benefit-cost ratio of Project B is 1.5, which project would you select? The answer is Project A, as the benefit-cost ratio is higher in Project A. Click Close to go to the Process Selection Methods dashboard. Return on investment, or ROI, is commonly used in financial parlance to indicate how profitable a project is. Return on investment is the average rate of return or benefits expected as compared to the initial investment. If a project involves an initial investment of $100,000 and generates an average return of $20,000 per year, it means the ROI is $20,000 by $100,000, or 20%. Higher the ROI, the more profitable the project is. Click Close to go to the Process Selection Methods dashboard. Opportunity cost is yet another term used in evaluating competing projects that you might see in the exam. It means the opportunity given up by selecting one project over another. Problems where a project has to be selected over other projects on the basis of their net present value and opportunity cost can be expected in the exam. For example, you may come across a question such as, what is the opportunity cost of selecting Project B if Project A has an NPV of $55,000 and Project B has an NPV of $85,000? The answer is $55,000. This is the NPV of Project A, which was selected over Project B. Click Close to go to the Process Selection Methods dashboard. In the next screen, let us look at the There are 6 project management processes, which are part of Project Integration Management knowledge area. They are the Develop Project Charter, done in the Initiation Process Group, Develop Project Management Plan, undertaken in the Planning Process Group, Direct and Manage Work Carried Out in the Executing Process Group, Monitor and Control Project and Perform Integrated Change Control, undertaken in the Monitoring and Controlling Process Group, and close project or phase done in the closing process group. Let us look at each of these processes in detail. In the next screen, let us understand how to read process-related information. As you can see in the project management process diagram, these elements within the knowledge area represent the inputs from the same knowledge area. These elements represent the inputs from other knowledge areas. These represent the tools and techniques used in the process. These are outputs of the process. These represent the output within the same knowledge area, whereas these outputs are fed into the knowledge areas other than the one that the process is a part of. You can observe that the process in the image is color-coded based on the process group. Initiating process group is in yellow, planning process group is in blue, and so on. You can read the processes and their color codes in the legend box on the bottom left of the screen. The process group affiliation is also indicated in the text of the description. It is important to understand the process group context to appreciate what the process does. In the next screen, let us look at the Develop Project Charter process. Develop Project Charter is an initiating process. A project charter is essentially a document that authorizes a project. Once a project has received a charter, it means that the project manager can start employing the organization's resources for the project activities. Let us look at the key inputs to be considered in preparing the project charter. The first input is the project statement of work. This is created by project sponsor, or the customer describing their needs, project scope, and how the project fits into their strategic goal. If the project is taken up under a contract, the request for proposal, that is, RFP, can be considered as project statement of work. The next input is the business case. This document establishes whether the investment in a project is worth, from a business point of view, the business need for the project, and the cost-benefit analysis. It provides important information to the project manager about the goals of the project and the boundaries in terms of the desired results, cost, etc. If the project is being undertaken as part of a contract or agreement, the agreement provides an important input for the project manager that establishes what must be done in the project. The next input to be considered for project charter is enterprise environmental factors. Any project to be executed within the organization has to deal with the organization culture and existing systems. You can consider this as an organization baggage that comes with the project. This is the reason a project being executed in two different organizations may be done differently. Another factor to be considered is organizational process assets. This is a broad term and includes all the organizational processes, procedures and policies, corporate knowledge base, and historical project information. Every organization develops a set of processes, procedures, and policies that are based on the best practices learned by the organization over time. The historical information includes past project management plans, risks, lessons learned, etc., of similar projects executed. Now, let us look at the tools and techniques used in this process. The first technique is expert judgment. Expert judgment is an invaluable input to the process of formally authorizing a project, because an expert can provide insights into why a project makes business sense or why it does not. From experience, they may be able to shed light about the validity of the business drivers, feasibility, assumptions, and constraints that need to be considered for the project. Facilitation techniques is another technique used. The chartering process is often a collaborative activity involving many influential stakeholders in an organization. Facilitation techniques help bring all these stakeholders together and engage in fruitful discussions in order to arrive at an informed decision whether to go ahead with a project or not. The only output of this project is the project charter. Let us try to understand what the project charter might contain. The project charter usually contains the high-level project requirement and it should be created by the project sponsor and handed over to the project manager. The project manager can do the groundwork to prepare the project charter, but it must be signed by the project sponsor or somebody in the performing organization who is higher in authority than the project manager. It is important to point out that a project charter is not a project management plan. The detailed risk, schedule, cost analysis, etc. is part of the project management plan and should be done during the project planning phase, when there is more detail on the availability of the project to do so. The charter should be sufficiently high level to accommodate the minor changes that might arise in the project. In the next screen, let us discuss the second process under Project Integration Management, Develop Project Management Plan. This is the process of documenting the actions necessary to define, prepare, integrate, and coordinate the subsidiary plans. Examples of subsidiary plans are Project Time Management Plan, Project Cost Management Plan, Project Human Resource Management Plan, etc. The Project Management Plan does not just describe when the project would start, what activities should be done, and when the project would get over. It is a detailed document and describes how the project would be executed, monitored, and controlled, and closed. Many people think that project schedule developed using Microsoft Project is the project management plan. However, that is not true. Project Management Plan contains all the subsidiary plans and their baseline value. It also contains the allowed variance in the baseline value. Performance measurement baseline of project's time is the total of project baseline time and the agreed time variance for the project. For example, the Time Management Plan section would have mentioned the time taken by a project. The period mentioned in the Project Management Plan is 180 days. This 180-day period is also called the baseline time value. Therefore, the baseline value is the initial agreed value in the project management plan. So, if the time variance agreed in the plan is 10%, the project should be executed in maximum 180 plus 180 multiplied by 10% is 180 plus 18, which is 198 days. Whether the baseline time value should be 180 days or 300 days is decided by analyzing the project activities, and it should not be decided arbitrarily. In the next screen, let us look at the various inputs, outputs, and tools and techniques of this process. Let us look at the inputs considered in developing the project plan. Project charter from the previous process is an important input. The other inputs include output of the other planning processes, because the project management plan is supposed to integrate all of these plans. The examples of other plans are Time Management Plan, Cost Management Plan, and Quality Management Plan, etc. All of these plans are developed over a period as the project progresses. These will be discussed in detail later in this tutorial. In addition to these, enterprise environmental factors and organization process assets are also inputs to developing the project management plan. In fact, these two factors have more influence in developing project management plan than in developing project charter. It is recommended that you understand these inputs, outputs, and tools and techniques clearly, as most of these will be repeated in other processes as well. The two tools and techniques employed in this process are expert judgment and facilitation techniques. The very obvious output of this process is the project management plan. In the next screen, let us look at some of the key terms which are crucial in understanding these processes. Let us look at a few key terms to understand project management processes. The first is the work authorization system. There should be a formal process of authorizing work within the project. So, be it internal team members or project contractor, there should be a formal process of giving go-ahead to start work on the project. The next two related terms are corrective and preventive action. You will come across these terms throughout this PMP tutorial. Corrective action is any action taken to bring expected future project performance in line with the project management plan. For example, if a project milestone is delayed, as a corrective action, you include additional resources to ensure that the final project deadline is not delayed. While corrective action involves implementing actions to deal with actual deviations from the performance baselines, preventive action deals with anticipated or possible deviation from performance baselines. For example, to ensure that projects are not delayed, you do a proper estimation of the work and assign enough resources to the project so that they are not delayed. A very important system that needs to be established early on in a project is the change control system. Since projects are executed in a dynamic environment, it is quite natural to expect changes in the project requirements. The change control system is the formal documented procedures, paperwork, tracking systems for authorizing changes. Therefore, the change control system analyzes each of the incoming change requests and decides whether to accept the change request or reject it. A configurable item is any product, service, or result within the project whose characteristics need to be identified, documented, and placed under change control mechanism. Examples of configurable items are project documents, source code, physical parts such as tools, recommended settings for machinery, etc. When a formal configuration management system is put in place, it is essentially establishing a control system that can preserve the characteristics of these items. Now, let us look at the next process of the project integration management knowledge area, which is direct and manage project work. Direct and manage project work is the process of performing the work defined in the project management plan to achieve the project objective. This process marks the performance and completion of activities in a project. The input to this process is obviously the project management plan, since the project is executed as per the project management plan. The other inputs to this process are any approved change requests that need to be implemented. These could be in the form of corrective or preventive actions upon which the team has decided to work. The other two inputs are enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets. Let us look at the tools and techniques. Expert judgment is an important tool used in this process as well. Another technique is the Project Management Information System, or PMIS. The PMIS is a combination of documents, dashboards, software tools, etc., where the data and information related to the project gets collected as the work is being done. During execution, it is natural to expect that plenty of meetings will take place among the team members and among other stakeholders as well. There are several outputs from this process. Project deliverables are produced. As the deliverables are being produced, there would also be data related to the project performance that will be generated, such as what was done, how long did it take, how much did it actually cost, etc. Along with these key outputs, there are changes that new change requests may emerge. This could be because, during the execution phase, the team or the stakeholders may realize that what is being produced is not meeting the expectations or needs and that something else may need to be done. In the process, project documents and project management plan get updated. Let us look at monitor and control project work in the next screen. Monitor and control project work is the process of tracking, reviewing, and regulating the progress to meet the performance objective or objectives defined in the project management plan. Now, the estimated time performance measurement baseline is 180 days and 10%. The monitor and control project work is the process area that tracks whether 180 days and 10% time performance baseline is being met or not. Let us also look at the key inputs for the monitor and control project work process. Project management plan is the key input, as the performance measurement baselines are part of the project management plan. The other key input to monitor and control project work is work performance information. It is the status of the project, that is, the status of the project deliverables, the cost incurred, the time elapsed in the project, etc. Along with the work performance information, forecasts related to the cost and time form important inputs upon which the project manager has to act. Validated changes confirms that the approved changes have been appropriately incorporated. Enterprise environmental factors and organization process assets are also inputs to this process. Expert judgment, analytical techniques, project management information system, and meetings are the various tools and techniques. One of the outputs of this process area is change requests. Change requests could be in the nature of corrective and preventive actions or defect repair. If the performance measurement baselines are not being met, this process ensures that project manager takes appropriate corrective and preventive action to get close to the performance measurement baselines. Along with the recommended corrective and preventive action, monitor and control project work also results in identifying defects, which must be taken care of. During the defect repair process, many reports related to the performance of the work of the project will be produced. Project management plan and project documents are also updated. In the next screen, let us focus on Perform Integrated Change Control process. Perform Integrated Change Control is the process of reviewing all change requests, approving and managing changes to the project deliverables, organizational process assets, project documents, and the project management plan. This is where all the recommendations for changes, corrective actions, preventive actions, and defect repairs are evaluated across all the knowledge areas and either approved or rejected. The inputs to this process are similar to that of the monitor and control project work process. Project management plan, work performance reports, enterprise environmental factors, and organizational process assets. The only additional input is the change request, since the Perform Integrated Change Control process is supposed to take care of managing the incoming changes. To make a judgment about the change requests, project management plan and the work performance reports are also referred to. Another important tool and technique used in this, along with expert judgment and meetings, is change control tools, and most important among them is Change Control Board. The team takes up the ownership of analyzing each of the incoming changes and also does the impact analysis for the changes, and finally approves or rejects a change. The project manager, project sponsor, and a few of the important stakeholders and team members may be part of the Change Control Board. The process should produce change requests that are approved, a log of change requests processed, requests that were either approved or rejected, and a few updates to the project plan and other documents. Change management and change control is the theme recurring in many questions in the examination. You can expect questions in the exam which test a project manager's response to a particular change in the project. In the next screen, let us take a closer look at functioning of this process. Now, let us look at the process of change. First, the project manager should determine that a change has either already occurred or if the change is necessary. One of the important qualities of a good project manager is that they will push back on unnecessary changes. The next step is to evaluate its impact on the project in totality. The team needs to understand what would be the impact on the time, cost, quality, risk, resource requirements, and so on. Once the impact is known, the project manager along with the team should look for various possible options to accommodate the change. For instance, in order to accommodate an increase in scope, it may be necessary to extend timeline, add resources, increase budget, or a combination of the above. Once the impact analysis and exploration of possible options are completed, The project manager should present it to internal as well as external stakeholders for their approval. It should be presented to internal stakeholders first, because the management of an organization may decide to absorb the change within the project's reserves without opting to bill the customer. If the project will have an impact on the agreed baselines of time, cost, scope, and quality, one needs to get in touch with the external stakeholders and the customer. These steps are an important aspect of a project manager's job, and the ability of a project manager to manage change will be tested in the CAPM examination. In the next screen, let us look into a business scenario to understand this concept better. After reading the problem statement, click the Solution button to look at a possible answer. Close project or phase is the last process of the project management integration knowledge area. This process ensures that the project or a phase is formally closed after completion. Remember that PMI expects a mature organization and a trained project manager to be diligent in following closure formalities. Without going through the formal closure formalities, the project cannot abruptly be closed. The project should be formally closed, even if it is terminated due to some problem. The key input to this process is the accepted deliverables. The deliverables have to be brought into a state that they can be properly transitioned. Transition means they are handed over to the organization or group that will be responsible for operations, maintenance, and support. The other inputs are project management plan and organizational process assets. Expert judgment, analytical techniques, and meetings are the commonly used tools and techniques. The closure of a project or phase results in a product, service, or a transition. In the process, one of the important outputs is updates to the organizational process assets. These include the actual performance against the plan, the key lessons learned during the project, the risks identified, the updates to the skills and experience of the team members, etc. Updating these assets is mandatory as it helps the organization gain maturity and learn from the experience. In the next screen, let us look into a business scenario to understand this concept better. After reading the problem statement, click the Solution button to look at a possible answer. Here is a quick recap of what was covered in this lesson. Project integration management involves unification, consolidation, articulation, and integrative actions that are crucial for successfully completing the project. Integrating the project activities is the key role of a project manager. The project team focuses on completing the project activities, and the project sponsor warrants the team against unsolicited changes. Benefit measurement methods ascertain the costs and benefits of undertaking the project, while constrained optimism methods rely on mathematical modeling to select the best projects that achieve business objectives. Various project integration management processes are develop project charter, develop project management plan, direct and manage work, monitor and control project, perform integrated change control, and close project or phase. Hello, and welcome to CAPM certification course offered by Simplilearn. In this lesson, we will focus on project scope management. Let us begin with the objectives of this lesson. After completing this lesson, you will be able to define project scope management, differentiate between project scope and product scope, identify the key terms used in project scope management, explain work breakdown structure, describe the project scope management processes. In the next screen, let us take a look at Project Management Process Map. There are 47 processes in project management grouped into 10 knowledge areas and mapped to 5 process groups. In this lesson, we will look at the second knowledge area, that is, project scope management and its processes. Let us begin with the first topic of this lesson, that is, project scope management. Project scope management includes the processes required to ensure that a project comprises all and only the work required to complete the project successfully. The project scope management is concerned about the scope. What is not there in the scope is also clearly identified. In the next screen, let us look at the key activities performed under project scope management. Let us look at a few of the typical activities that happen as part of the project scope management. Constant monitoring is essential to make sure that all the project work is being completed. The gradual, uncontrolled increase in scope of the project is referred as scope creep. It is necessary to define the project scope boundaries and not let people randomly add to the project scope. Gold plating is doing more than what is required as part of the project scope. This has to be avoided in projects. As per the published statistics about projects done globally, less than 40% of projects can be considered successful. Therefore, the focus should be on what is required rather than squandering around with what is not required. 40% might be considered less, but a project is classified as successful only if it meets all its objectives and is done within time and cost budgets. In the next screen, let us understand the differences between product scope and project scope. Project scope management deals with managing both the product scope as well as the project scope. Product scope refers to the features and functions that characterize a product, service, or result. The word product may also include creation of a service. For example, in the banking industry, each of their services is called a product. Likewise, a savings account is one of their products. Mutual fund is another. On the other hand, project scope is the work that needs to be accomplished to deliver the output of the project, which could be a product, service, or result with the specific features and functions. For instance, to deliver a product, you may also need to produce a requirements document or a design document. These are not part of the product scope, but it may very well be part of the project scope. In the next screen, let us discuss a few key terms used in the project scope management. WBS stands for Work Breakdown Structure. It means breaking the project deliverables into smaller and more manageable components called work packages. The last level of work in such subdivision is called work packages, and the whole structure is called WBS. For example, a typical software development project would have various activities like finalizing requirements, designing the new system, coding, testing, and going live with the new system. Each of these translates into high-level deliverables, which can be further subdivided into smaller activities which are more predictable. WBS Dictionary, like any dictionary, contains the explanation of the terms used in WBS. A typical WBS dictionary has details like the control account, name of the work package, description of the work package, resource assigned, if there are any assumptions or dependencies to complete the work package, the due date to finish the work package, technical dependencies, and so on. WBS Dictionary is useful for the person or group working on the work packages as it further elaborates the decomposed work package. Control account is a level within WBS at which management wishes to exercise control. For example, perform earned value analysis, track performance, etc. In the next screen, let us cover work breakdown structure in detail. Along with the scope statement and the WBS dictionary, the work breakdown structure forms the scope baseline of the project. That is, it should reflect the entire scope of the project. Any deliverables that are not reflected in WBS are not part of the project. The creation of the WBS should involve the whole team. The creation of WBS creates common understanding about the scope and therefore leads to team buy-in. During decomposing the deliverables, you must ensure that each level is complete. That is, it includes all the work in the project before you start to decompose further. Decomposition continues until the lowest level deliverable cannot be logically subdivided further, or they can be estimated with reasonable accuracy. WBS is a deliverable-oriented decomposition. It should only contain deliverables and not activities. While developing the schedule, converting the deliverables into activities is one of the problems, as WBS does not contain activity-level details. Concept-based questions on work breakdown structure can be expected in the exam, so it is essential to have a clear understanding of the concept of WBS. In the next screen, let us look into an example which shows how WBS is derived. Work breakdown structure of a core banking software development project is given on the screen. The scope of the project has been divided into WBS elements, like requirements documentation, design and architecture, code, test, and go live. Further, these elements are decomposed into work package level to make it easier to manage the deliverables in terms of scope, cost, and time. It also helps to estimate or assign the specific work packages to team members or groups. The design and architecture has been decomposed to model and prototype. Similarly, code is decomposed into work package 3.1 and 3.2, test into work package 4.1 and 4.2, and go live into product installer and warranty sheet. WP 3.1 can be represented as Model 1 and WP 3.2 as Model 2. Similarly, WP 4.1 may be test strategy document and WP 4.2 a test plan document. The number here indicates work breakdown code. In the next screen, let us discuss how project scope management is actually accomplished. There are 6 project management processes, which are part of project scope management knowledge area. These processes are plan scope management, collect requirements, define scope, create WBS, validate scope, and control scope. The first 4 processes, that is, plan scope management, collect requirements, define scope, and create WBS, are part of the planning process group, and the remaining 2 processes, validate scope and control scope, are executed as part of the monitoring and controlling process group. In the next few screens, we will look at each of these processes in detail. Let's begin with plan scope management. Plan scope management process creates a scope management plan that documents how the project scope will be defined, validated, and controlled. It is usually the starting point of the planning processes on a project. Understanding the scope and how it will be managed is fundamental to planning the other aspects of the project. Let us review the list of inputs to this process. The Project Management Plan provides other subsidiary plans and will help guide the scope planning activities on the project. The Project Charter provides an overall context and the high-level product and project description, which may help determining the approach for the scope management. Enterprise environmental factors provide the organizational context to the project, including the culture of the organization, the infrastructure, key personnel, and so on. Organizational process assets provide inputs such as policies and procedures, historical information, and knowledge base. Now, let us look at the tools and techniques employed in this process. Expert judgment refers to input received from knowledgeable and experienced resources. Meetings may be organized to determine the scope management plan. Everyone responsible for the project scope management, such as the project manager, sponsor, customer, and other stakeholders, must attend these meetings. Now, let us look at the outputs of this process. The scope management plan describes how the project scope will be defined, like who will be involved in the process, whose inputs will be sought, what techniques may be used to get these inputs, etc., developed, that is, In what form will the scope be elaborated and documented, monitored and controlled, and verified? The plan may also describe how WBS will be created from the scope statement, how changes to the scope will be managed, how deliverables will receive formal acceptance, etc. The Requirements Management Plan is a subsidiary of the Project Management Plan that describes how requirements will be analyzed, documented, and managed. A requirement is voiced by a customer or a stakeholder, whereas scope represents what the project team will do or deliver in order to meet that need. The Requirement Management Plan may also describe how the configuration management of requirements will be carried out, how they will be prioritized, how the metrics will be used to rationalize these choices, and how the traceability of the requirements will be maintained throughout the project. You may get questions in the CAPM exam based on the inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs of plan scope management. So, understanding of these topics will help you to answer concept-based questions correctly. In the next screen, let us look at the second process, Collect Requirements. Collect Requirements is the second of the 6 project scope management processes. It is the process of defining and documenting stakeholders' needs to meet the project objectives. Let us look at the inputs to this process. Scope management and the Requirements Management Plan provide clarity on how the team should go about collecting and documenting the requirements for the project. The Stakeholder Management Plan provides insights into the stakeholders' communication requirements and the level of stakeholder engagement needed. The Stakeholder Register may provide useful guidance about which of the stakeholders could provide the requirements for the project. It is very important that all the stakeholders' expectations are captured adequately and represented in the requirements document. The Project Charter provides high-level requirements and expectations and may be used to detail out the requirements. Now let us look at the tools and techniques that can be employed to collect the requirements. It is important for the project team to use a combination of techniques that will give them maximum clarity about the requirements. Some of the techniques may include direct interaction like interviewing, forming focus groups, conducting workshops, and using group creativity techniques like brainstorming and group decision-making techniques. It may also include some offline activities like conducting surveys via questionnaires, etc. Observation can be a very powerful way to capture requirements that may be difficult to state or articulate. Prototyping is a powerful technique where the team comes up with a model or sample artifact that helps the users visualize and gain more clarity about what is being developed. Benchmarking is useful for understanding and learning from the industry and organizational benchmarks about the bare minimum expectations. Use of context diagrams and analyzing the documentation provided can also help in collecting requirements. Requirements documentation is one of the most important output. The second output of this process is Requirements Traceability Matrix. This table helps trace whether the work has happened on the requirements, whether all requirements are reflected in the final product of the project, etc. In the next screen, let us look into a business scenario to understand this concept better. After reading the problem statement, click the Solution button to look at a possible answer. Plan Scope Management Process creates a scope management plan that documents how the project scope will be defined, validated, and controlled. It is usually the starting point of the planning processes on a project. Understanding the scope and how it will be managed is fundamental to planning the other aspects of the project. Let us review the list of inputs to this process. The Project Management Plan provides other subsidiary plans and will help guide the scope planning activities on the project. The Project Charter provides an overall context and the high-level product and project description, which may help determining the approach for the scope management. Enterprise environmental factors provide the organizational context to the project, including the culture of the organization, the infrastructure, key personnel, and so on. Organizational process assets provide inputs such as policies and procedures, historical information, and knowledge base. Now, let us look at the tools and techniques employed in this process. Expert judgment refers to input received from knowledgeable and experienced resources. Meetings may be organized to determine the scope management plan. Everyone responsible for the project scope management, such as the project manager, sponsor, customer, and other stakeholders, must attend these meetings. Now, let us look at the outputs of this process. The scope management plan describes how the project scope will be defined, like who will be involved in the process, whose inputs will be sought, what techniques may be used to get these inputs, etc., developed, that is, in what form will the scope be elaborated and documented, monitored and controlled, and verified. The plan may also describe how WBS will be created from the scope statement, how changes to the scope will be managed, how deliverables will receive formal acceptance, etc. The Requirements Management Plan is a subsidiary of the Project Management Plan that describes how requirements will be analyzed, documented, and managed. A requirement is voiced by a customer or a stakeholder, whereas scope represents what the project team will do or deliver in order to meet that need. The Requirement Management Plan may also describe how the configuration management of requirements will be carried out, how they will be prioritized, how the metrics will be used to rationalize these choices, and how the traceability of the requirements will be maintained throughout the project. You may get questions in the CAPM exam based on the inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs of plan scope management. So, understanding of these topics will help you to answer concept-based questions correctly. In the next screen, let us look at the second process, collect requirements. Given on the screen is an example of the requirements traceability matrix. It lists all the requirements recorded in the requirements documentation in the first column. In the subsequent columns, it traces how the requirement is being met by specific sections or objects in the subsequent stages. In case of a software development project, the requirement about enabling multi-user access may require changes in multiple places. These are specifically called out in the columns titled Design, Coding, Testing, etc. This ensures each requirement is specifically addressed through all the stages of the life cycle and also provides a backwards traceability by clarifying why a particular change is made at each stage, that is, which requirement is driving these changes. A typical question in the CAPM exam can be one related to the creation of WBS. So, understanding the requirements traceability matrix will help you to answer concept-based questions. In the next screen, let us look at the third project scope management process, define scope. Given on the screen is an example of the requirements traceability matrix. It lists all the requirements recorded in the requirements documentation in the first column. In the subsequent columns, it traces how the requirement is being met by specific sections or objects in the subsequent stages. In case of a software development project, the requirement about enabling multi-user access may require changes in multiple places. These are specifically called out in the columns titled Design, Coding, Testing, etc. This ensures each requirement is specifically addressed through all the stages of the life cycle and also provides a backwards traceability by clarifying why a particular change is made at each stage, that is, which requirement is driving these changes. A typical question in the CAPM exam can be one related to the creation of WBS. So, understanding the requirements traceability matrix will help you to answer concept-based questions. In the next screen, let us look at the third project scope management process, define scope. The next process in the project scope management is define scope. Define scope is the process of developing a detailed description of the project and product, Collect requirements lists for all the different requirements or needs expressed by the stakeholders. Define scope deals with the detailing these requirements and determining what will be in the scope of the project and what will not be. It belongs to the planning process group. Let us look at the inputs to this process. The Scope Management Plan provides the details about the process of capturing and documenting the scope of the project. Project Charter, which describes the business need of the project, and requirements documentation developed as part of the collect requirement process also form inputs to this process. Organizational process assets are also a part of the defined scope process. Organization templates may be used to write the project scope or refer to the lessons learned from previous similar projects. For projects which have product instead of a service as an output, product analysis is a commonly used technique. This defines what is required in a project's product. Alternatives generation is a technique used to see if the project requirements can be completed in a different way, similar to lateral thinking. Expert judgment is a technique using an expert, may be an external consultant, to look at various requirements and come up with the project scope statement. In order to define the scope, you may also conduct specific workshops that are facilitated to generate ideas around the project scope. The output of this process is the project scope statement, which describes in detail the project's deliverables and the work required to create those deliverables. Therefore, the project scope statement has project's product scope description, product acceptance criteria, project deliverables, and project constraints. This process also results in updating the requirements documentation and requirement traceability matrix developed earlier. Let us look at the next process, create WBS. The final planning process within scope management is create WBS. Create WBS is the process of subdividing project deliverables and project work into smaller, more manageable components. It belongs to the planning process group. The WBS is created with project scope statement and the requirements document as input. The Scope Management Plan provides the details about the process of capturing and documenting the scope of the project and how the deliverables should be decomposed in the form of a WBS and how it should be maintained. The templates and standards related to the industry and the specific enterprise may be useful in creating WBS. If there is an organization's template for writing down WBS, that is also used. The other two inputs are organizational process assets and enterprise environmental factors. Decomposition is an important technique used in this process. In decomposition, the project deliverables are subdivided into smaller, more manageable components until the work and deliverables are defined at the work package level. The work package level is the lowest level in the WBS and is the point at which the cost and activity duration of the work can be reliably estimated and managed. The level of detail for work packages vary as per the size and complexity of the project. Another technique used is expert judgment. The output of this process is scope baseline. The project scope statement, WBS, and WBS dictionary are collectively referred to as scope baseline. Scope baseline is part of project management plan. This process also results in project document updates. Implementing WBS may result in getting more clarity about the requirements itself. The requirement document or the project scope statement developed earlier should be updated. In the next screen, let us look at the Validate Scope process. Validate Scope is the process of formalizing acceptance of the completed project deliverables. Validating scope includes reviewing deliverables with the customer or sponsor to ensure they are completed satisfactorily and obtain formal acceptance. Validate scope is closely related to quality control as well. However, Scope validation is primarily concerned with acceptance of the deliverables, whereas quality control is primarily concerned with correctness of the deliverables and meeting the quality requirements specified for the deliverables. Quality control is generally performed before scope validation, but these two processes can be performed in parallel as well. Let us look at the inputs to this process. The Project Management Plan provides information about how the deliverables will be validated and accepted by the customer and other stakeholders. The requirements documentation acts as the basis on which the validation activity is to be carried out. The requirements traceability matrix documents how each of the requirements has been implemented and how it can be validated. The fourth input is verified deliverables and implies that the verification activity is first carried out by the team under the control quality process, and only then the deliverable enters the validation process. Work performance data gives more inputs on the deliverables that may be useful in validating and getting acceptance. The technique used to validate scope is inspection and group decision-making. Some of the typical activities that are done as part of inspection are measuring, examining, and validating to determine whether the work and deliverables meet requirements and product acceptance criteria. Group decision-making techniques may be employed if a team is working on the process of validating the deliverables. It helps in arriving at a decision by either consensus or majority or any other method. The output of this process is the accepted deliverable. Sometimes deliverable might be acceptable, and that results in another output, that is, change request. Due to the validation process, the information about the deliverables, which have been accepted, and any observations during the validation process may be recorded. Some documents, like Report on Status of the Project's Product, is updated as a result of this process and listed as one of the outputs. In the next screen, let us look at the control scope process. Control scope is the process of monitoring the status of the project and product scope and changes to the scope baseline. Controlling the project scope ensures all requested changes and recommended corrective or preventive actions are processed through the same Perform Integrated Change Control process. The inputs Project Management Plan, Requirements Documentation, and Work Performance Data are the same as the inputs for Control Scope and Validate Scope. Work Performance Data has information about progress of work on the different deliverables. The other input is Requirements Traceability Matrix, which lists the requirements included in the requirements document. Organization process assets also influence control scope in a sense where an organization would have standard templates for monitoring and reporting scope-related updates. Scope control is performed using variance analysis. The variation is measured from the original scope baseline, which decides whether any corrective or preventive action is required. The key output of the control scope is work performance information, which is planned versus actual technical scope performance. If any part of the scope performance does not meet the acceptance criteria, it may result in change requests, which is the other major output of this process. All of these may result in updates to the project plan, as well as other project and organizational process documents. Business scenario-based questions on scope control can be expected in the CAPM exam, so understanding the concept of scope control is essential. In the next screen, let us look into a business scenario to understand this concept better.
If you are looking to become a skilled project manager, have a look at the postgraduate program in project management by Simplilearn.
There are 47 processes in project management grouped into 10 knowledge areas and mapped to 5 process groups. In this lesson, we will look at the third knowledge area, that is, project time management and its processes. Let us begin with the first topic of this lesson, project time management. The purpose of project time management is to ensure that the projects get completed on time. This knowledge area is primarily concerned with developing a project schedule and ensuring that project goes as per the agreed schedule. If there is a need to change the project schedule, the change should happen by following a proper change control procedure. Another term used in the PMP examination is Schedule Management Plan. Schedule Management Plan is part of the Project Management Plan and has information on the planned project schedule and its management and control. Let us discuss the key activities of project time management in the next screen. The key activities that are part of the project time management include identifying activities, estimating time and resources, and sequencing activities. It is important to identify a list of activities that would be a part of the project. Next, an estimation of time and resources required for completing the identified activities are done. Finally, these activities need to be sequenced as per the dependencies. In the next screen, let us discuss project schedule. Project schedule represents the time dimension of the project plan and has information like when the project would start, when each of the project activities would happen, in what order the project activities would happen, when project would be completed, etc. Usually, software system is used to develop the project schedule. The project team can enter the list of activities in the software, as well as their dependencies, and the software can produce the project schedule as the output. Microsoft Project is the most popular tool used for project schedule development. Generally, project schedule is considered similar to project management plan. Project management plan is different from project schedule. Project management plan not only has information about the project schedule, but also other important project-related plans, like risk management plan, cost management plan, etc. Let us focus on Gantt chart in the next screen. Gantt chart is a type of bar chart that illustrates a project schedule. It shows the dependencies between the project activities as well as their percent completion. A sample Gantt chart is shown on the screen. Two summary elements of the work breakdown structure are depicted. To complete those elements, there are a number of activities under them. Some of these activities have dependencies. For example, Activity B and C have a dependency. Activity C can start only when Activity B is completed. The chart gives you an idea about when specific activities are planned to finish and when the overall WBS element will get delivered. Create tasks and work with the Gantt chart. This will make answering Gantt chart-based questions easy and fun. In the next screen, let us understand the relationships that exist among project activities. Network diagram is extensively used in the project time management knowledge area to plot the activity dependencies. This is a graphical representation of the project activities in the form of a network. There are two ways to draw a network diagram. In Precedence Diagramming Model, PDM, or Activity on Node, AON, boxes represent activities and the arrows indicate the dependency. This type of network can have all four types of relationships between the activities. In Arrow Diagramming Model, ADM, or Activity on Arrow, AOA, the arrows represent activities. The relationships and sequences can be inferred from the direction of the arrows and linkages between the activities. In such types of network, only finish-to-start relationships can be shown. Such diagrams may need to make use of dummy activities to indicate some dependency between the activities. There may be questions in the PMP exam based on the network diagram, so create and work with the diagram. This will make answering network diagram-based questions easy and fun. In the next screen, let us look at a network diagram. A sample network diagram is shown on the screen. Activities A and C can happen in parallel. B and D require both A and C to complete, whereas E requires both B and D to complete. Activity on Arrow network diagram makes use of hammock activities. They are used to show a comprehensive summary activity combining several other activities underneath for control and reporting purposes. In the next screen, let us look at a few important terms in time management. When a successor activity can start before the predecessor activity can complete, it is considered lead. For example, you can start preparing the test environment 2 weeks before the development activity finishes. When the successor activity has to wait for a few days after the predecessor activity has been completed, it is considered lag. For example, one needs to wait for 2 days for the foundation to settle before work on the pillars for the next floor starts. Rolling wave planning is an iterative planning technique in which the work to be accomplished in the near term is planned in detail, while the work in the future is planned at a higher level. It is a form of progressive elaboration. In the context of estimating techniques, analogous estimating is based on the previous project data. Therefore, if the last 5 similar projects took 6 months to complete, the next one will also take 6 months. This technique employs expert judgment. Another estimating technique is parametric estimating. This technique uses a mathematical model to calculate projected time for an activity based on the historical records from previous projects and other information. A few common parameters are identified based on the previous project data, and that parameter is used to predict the time required to complete the next activity or project. For example, you can normally complete 10 kilometers of highway construction lanes a week. Effort is the total amount of work required to complete the activity. Duration is the amount of time it takes in terms of elapsed or calendar days. If you have an activity that requires 10 people to work for 5 days, the total effort is 50 person days, but the duration is only 5 days. In the next screen, let us look at the project time management processes. There are 7 project time management processes. They are plan schedule management, define activities, sequence activities, estimate activity resources, estimate activity durations, develop schedule, and control schedule. The first 6 processes are executed during the planning process group. The ultimate goal of these planning processes is to develop the project schedule. The 7th and the last process is a part of the monitoring and controlling process group. In the next few screens, let us discuss these processes in detail. We will begin with plan schedule management. As defined in PMBOK Guide, plan schedule management is the process of establishing the policies, procedures, and documentation for planning, developing, managing, executing, and controlling the project schedule. It belongs to the planning process group. Let us look at the inputs to this process. The project management plan provides other subsidiary plans and will guide the schedule planning activities on the project. The project charter provides an overall context and the high-level product and project description, which might help determine the approach for schedule management. Few projects might have scheduling constraint. For example, projects of Olympics 2016 should be completed at the same time. Enterprise environmental factors provide the organizational context to the project, including the culture of the organization, the infrastructure like scheduling systems available, key personnel, and so on. Organizational process assets provide inputs such as policies and procedures, templates, past performance data and estimates, historical information, and knowledge base. Now, let us look at the tools and techniques employed in this process. Expert judgment refers to input received from knowledgeable and experienced resources. Experts can draw from their previous experiences the proper approach to govern the schedule on a project. Meetings may be organized to determine the schedule management plan. Anybody responsible for the project schedule management, such as the project manager, sponsor, customer, and other stakeholders, must attend these meetings. Several analytical techniques may be used to determine the schedule management plan. These may include different planning approaches and philosophies, such as rolling wave planning, or different scheduling software that allowed to build what-if scenarios and study the effect of advanced scheduling techniques like leveling, fast tracking, and crashing. Now, let us look at the outputs of this process. Schedule Management Plan is a component of the Project Management Plan that describes the criteria and activities required to arrive at the project schedule, as well as how the project may be baselined, monitored, and controlled. In the next screen, let us define Activities Process. Define activities is the process of identifying the specific actions to be performed to produce the project deliverables. It belongs to the planning process group. The important input for the Define Activities process is the Scope Baseline. Scope Baseline is a term used collectively to refer to project deliverables, constraints, and assumptions of the project. In addition to the Scope Baseline, the other inputs in this process are Enterprise Environmental Factors, Organizational Process Assets, and Schedule Management Plan. A reason why Enterprise Environmental Factors is an input to define activities is because the organization might be using project management software to define activities, and that may influence the activity definition process. The knowledge base containing historical information regarding activities lists used by previous similar projects is a good example of organization process assets applied to scheduling. The tools and techniques used in defining activities are decomposition and rolling wave planning. The last technique is expert judgment, where the experience of project team members is used in developing detailed activity lists. The output of the process is activity list, activity attributes, and milestone list. Activity list contains a list of identified activities. Activity attributes are the additional information about the activity itself. A milestone is a significant point or event in the project. A milestone list identifies all the milestones and indicates whether the milestone is mandatory or optional. Let us move on to the next process, Sequence Activities. Sequence activities is the process of identifying and documenting relationships among the project activities and is also part of the planning process group. For every activity and milestone, except the first and last one, is connected to or at least one predecessor and one successor. The inputs to this process are activity list, activity attributes, and milestone list. All these are the outputs of the Define Activity process. The other inputs are Schedule Management Plan and Project Scope Statement. Schedule Management Plan provides guidance in terms of methodology to be employed for many of the scheduling activities on the project. Organization Process Assets are also an input to sequencing activities because the organization might have some kind of knowledge base for scheduling project activities. The enterprise environmental factors relevant to this process may be scheduling tools in use, project management information systems, work authorization systems, etc. One of the important tools and techniques used in sequencing activities is the precedence diagramming method. In this method, the activities are drawn on a network diagram and all the different kinds of dependencies between the activities are determined. While determining activity dependency, it is important to identify the type of relationship or dependency between the activities. The other technique is leads and lag, which is widely used for sequencing activities. The output of the process is the Project Schedule Network Diagram, which is a graphical representation of the project activities in a form of network, which also shows the activity dependencies. While designing the network diagram, new activities might be identified, and that would result in some of the project document updates, especially the ones that list all the project activities. In the next screen, let us look at the Estimate Activity Resources process. After sequencing the activities, the next step in project time management is estimating the resources required to accomplish each of the identified activities. Estimate activity resources process also belongs to the planning process group. Here, resources do not mean only the human resources, but includes all other resources like equipment, raw materials, machinery, etc. Schedule Management Plan is the first input. Schedule Management Plan provides guidance in terms of methodology to be employed for many of the scheduling activities on the project. The other inputs to this process are an activity list and activity attributes that are the outputs of the time management processes. Risk Register is another input. Risks to the project may influence the decisions about the resources that need to be deployed. Hence, Risk Register becomes an input to this project. In addition, activity cost estimates are another input. Cost and resource estimates on a project are interrelated and influence each other. For example, the cost might dictate the number and type of resources that can be employed, or the time might dictate the cost that may need to be incurred. Along with this, the resource calendar is also an important input because it has the information about the availability of each of the resources. Some of the enterprise environmental factors that can influence estimating activity resources are availability of required resources within the organization. The organizational process assets is also an important input, as the organization might have standard policies for staffing or for hiring contractors on the project. With all these inputs available for estimating activity resources, there are various techniques used for estimating the required resources. The first technique is using expert judgment. In this technique, an expert in resource planning and estimating can estimate each of the activities. The next technique used is alternative analysis. In this, the activities are analyzed to identify different ways of completing them. This is to ensure only the required resources are assigned to each of the activities. This helps in resource optimization. Along with the two techniques, many organizations routinely publish their estimating data, and this could be used in activity resource estimation. Another technique that is routinely used in activity estimation is bottom-up estimating, which is decomposing the activity further down to understand it in more detail and estimating at that level. Later, all such estimates are added to arrive at the estimate of the activity. In real projects, one has to use all to estimate each of the activities. Sometimes, the project management software also helps in estimating. The software estimates are based on the inputs provided to it. Software should only be considered as a supporting tool in estimation and never fully rely on its output. Clearly, the output of this process is the activity resource requirements. Along with this, resource breakdown structure is also prepared. The resource breakdown structure is the categorization of all the required resources in various categories. That is, human resources, equipment, raw materials, etc. In the process of estimation, several other project documents may also be updated. For example, the resource estimates are directly correlated with cost estimates. Let us now move on to the next process, estimate activity durations. The next process is to estimate the duration required to complete each of the activities. The duration estimation should be done by someone who is familiar with the project. For example, the same activity, if done by a high-skilled resource, would take less time compared to a less skilled resource. This may vary regardless of the resource used due to the project requirements. In addition, the activity duration estimation should be updated continuously as you move ahead with the project, because as the project progresses, there will be more clarity on the project. The inputs of this process are similar to the ones in sequence activities process. Schedule Management Plan is the first input. Schedule Management Plan provides guidance in terms of methodology to be employed for many of the scheduling activities on the project. For instance, it may contain information about the estimation techniques to be employed and the people who need to be involved in the estimation process. Activity resource requirements is also an input to this process because resources assigned to an activity would significantly affect the activity duration. That is, the lower skilled resources would take more time than the high skilled resources. The other inputs include activity list, activity attributes, and resource breakdown structure. Resource calendars are also an input to this process. The type and skill set of resources available to the team may have an impact on the time it would take to complete the activities. Risks to the project may influence the decisions about the time required to complete the activity. Hence, risk register becomes an input to this process. The project scope statement defines the constraints and assumptions affecting the project duration. An example of enterprise environmental factor that can affect duration is organization's productivity metrics, which is collected based on the experiences from multiple projects. The last input in this process is organizational process assets. Now, let us look at the tools and techniques used for estimating activity durations. First is the expert judgment, which means using previous project experiences in estimating the current project duration. This can be used with other estimation techniques and used to reconcile differences if different techniques result in different estimates. Three-point estimating is a method where 3 estimates are used instead of 1. It is part of a project management philosophy known as Program Evaluation and Review Technique. PERT. Estimating activity durations is often done as a team exercise, as each activity may require multiple skill sets to be applied. Therefore, it is important to use group decision-making techniques to arrive at a consensus, or at least an estimate that is acceptable to all the team members. Reserve analysis adds buffer into the project schedule to deal with any uncertainty. The contingency reserve may be added as a percentage of the activity duration or fixed number of work periods. The other tools and techniques are analogous estimating and parametric estimating. The outputs of this process are the activity duration estimates and project documents updates. The activity duration estimates is represented in terms of the range of possible results. For example, 10 days plus minus 2 days, that is, the activity would take minimum 8 days and maximum 12 days. In the next screen, let us look into a business scenario to understand this concept better. After reading the problem statement, click the Solution button to look at a possible answer. Develop schedule is the process of analyzing activity sequences, durations, resource requirements, and schedule constraints to create the project schedule. It belongs to the planning process group. Generally, scheduling software is used for developing the project schedule. Entering the activities, durations, and resources into a scheduling tool generates a schedule with planned dates for completing project activities. Developing a project schedule is an iterative process. Revising and maintaining a realistic schedule is a task in itself, and it continues throughout the project as the work progresses. The most of the inputs of this process are the outputs of estimate activity durations process. They are risk register, project scope statement, project staff assignments, resources calendars, organizational process assets, enterprise environmental factors, schedule management plan, activity list, activity attributes, project schedule network diagrams, activity resource requirements, resource breakdown structure, and activity duration estimates. Various tools and techniques are used to develop schedule process. Schedule network analysis is a technique that generates project schedule. It employs various analytical techniques such as critical path method, critical chain method, modeling techniques, and resource optimization techniques to create the project schedule. The other tools and techniques include leads and lags, schedule compression, and scheduling tool. Let us now look at the outputs of this process. The project schedule consists of a minimum planned start date and planned finish date for each activity. Although project schedule can be represented in tabular format, it is more often represented graphically using either bar charts or network diagrams, or a combination of the two. The final schedule, which is the output of the developed schedule process, is also called schedule baseline. Once the schedule is baselined, it can be changed only through formal approvals. Meeting the schedule baseline is one of the measures of project success. Schedule data produced may include number of resources, key milestones, etc. Project calendars specify the available working days and the number of shifts in each day. It indicates how many hours and days are available for the work of the project to be completed. Project Management Plan updates are a result of the developed schedule process. Many of the other subsidiary plans of the project plan may get impacted, which may include Cost Management Plan, Scope Management Plan, Risk Management Plan, etc. This may also result in other project documents being updated. In the next few screens, let us discuss schedule network analysis techniques. It is essential to know if the required resources are available at that time, along with the time estimate of each of the activities. Since schedule is calendar-based, it helps in estimating the same. Schedule network analysis technique generates project schedule. There are various schedule network techniques. Critical path method relies on determining the critical path on a project schedule. Critical chain method is a variant of the critical path method, wherein the critical chain is determined based on the logical, resource, and other kinds of dependencies between the activities. What-if scenario analysis is about trying to vary a certain parameter to observe the impact on the schedule. For instance, you may want to check result if you put in more resources on a particular activity to reduce its duration. Resource optimization techniques try to arrive at the optimal utilization of the resources used on a project. Ideally, you would want the resources to be fully utilized, but you would also want to build in sufficient buffers in case a certain resource is not available due to various reasons. In the next screen, let us look at the program evaluation and review technique. Program evaluation and review technique is based on 3-point estimates for an activity. The pessimistic estimate refers to the worst-case scenario, whereas most likely estimate is what you expect to happen in a realistic scenario. The optimistic estimate, on the other hand, represents the amount of time an activity would take in the best-case scenario. Based on these three estimates, the expected duration of the estimate is calculated as per the formula given on the screen. The formula for calculating standard deviation of an activity and variance of an activity is also given. There is no question asked on variance, but the formula is important because if the standard deviation of the whole project is to be calculated, the process is to calculate the variance of the whole project and then take its square root to calculate the standard deviation of the project. Concept-based questions on PERT can be expected in the PMP exam, so make a note of the formulae while you prepare for the exam. In the next screen, let us understand PERT with an example. Let us now figure out how we can apply the 3-point estimation that PERT uses in order to draw some useful conclusions. Assume that the optimistic, pessimistic, and most likely estimates are 20, 70, and 30 respectively. Using these values, you can determine the expected duration and the standard deviation as indicated. Now, if the causes of variation are random, you can assume that the actual values would be evenly distributed about the mean and will follow the normal distribution, sometimes referred to as the bell curve. Further, you can use the properties of the normal distribution. There is a 68% probability of the actual value falling within first sigma from the mean, 95.4% probability for the second sigma, and 99.7% probability of the actual value falling within third sigma. Extending this logic, The notion of Six Sigma is reaching a level of confidence that only 3.4 times out of a million would the actual value fall outside the stated range. PERT allows you to plan based on the intended level of confidence in the outcome and determine buffers accordingly. Let us discuss the critical path method in the next screen. Critical path is defined as the longest duration path through a network diagram, which determines the shortest time to complete the project. Float can be considered as a buffer time available to complete an activity. Float is calculated once the network diagram is ready. It is also called as slack. There are three kinds of float. The first being the total float, which is the amount of time an activity can be delayed without delaying the project end date or an intermediary milestone. The second type of float is free float, which is the amount of time an activity can be delayed without delaying the early start date of its successor or successors' activities. The last type is independent float, which is the amount of time an activity can be delayed if all the predecessors finish at their latest finish dates and you want to start all the immediate successors at their earliest start dates. The slack of the activities on the critical path is 0, because there is no scope to delay activities on the critical path. Critical path actually represents the project duration. Delaying activities on the critical path is as good as delaying the project duration. Concept-based questions on critical path can be expected in the exam, so it is essential to have a clear understanding of the concept. In the next screen, let us learn how to calculate float. Float of an activity can be calculated by two methods. However, the first step in critical path method is to identify the critical path of the network. Once the critical path is identified, follow the forward pass to find early start and early finish for each activity. The float of the activities on the critical path is 0, so they represent the overall project duration. Use forward pass or backward pass to calculate the total activity time. Calculate late finish and late start using backward pass method. Note the total float formula before you start for the exam. In the next screen, let us look at forward pass and backward pass methods in detail. In forward pass, you can either go through the network starting with time 0 and keep calculating the time required to complete each of the activities until you reach the last activity of the project. The starting time for each of the activity in this approach is called early start, and the end time for each activity is called the early finish. Alternatively, in backward pass, you can travel through the network from the project end date and calculate the time required to complete each activity. The end date in this approach is called the late finish, and the start date of the activity in this approach is called the late start. The float of the activity is either the difference between the late start and early start, or the difference between the late finish and early finish. Both the differences work out to be the same. Before the start of the PMP exam, please make a note of the total float formula. Let us understand the critical path calculation with an example in the next screen. Let us look at an example for critical path. There are 5 activities in this project and 2 paths in the network diagram. Start, 1, 2, 4, 5, end is one path, and start, 1, 3, 5, end is the second path. Since the duration of the path start 1, 2, 4, 5, end is 18 days, which is more than the duration of the path start 1, 3, 5, end, the critical path of the project is start 1, 2, 4, 5, end. Let us take activity 3 as an example. First, calculate the early start and early finish dates. Activity 3 can start only after activity 1. Since the early finish of activity 1 is 3, it becomes the early start of activity 3. Activity 3 cannot start earlier than 3 because activity 1 can be completed only by then. Therefore, early start of activity 3 is 3, since the duration of the activity is 4 days. The early finish of Activity 3 is 3 plus 4 equals 7 days. Now, let us calculate the late start and late finish of Activity 3. Late start of Activity 5 is 14 days. The Activity 3 happens just before Activity 5. So, the late finish of Activity 3 is 14 days. To calculate the late start, you can subtract the duration from late finish. Therefore, the late start of Activity 3 is 14 minus 4 equals 10. In the next screen, let us focus on schedule compression. Look at the 4 activities in the table. The normal cost of executing each of the activities, as well as how much each of the activities can be crashed, is also provided. Which activity would you crash to reduce the project time by 1 day? Activity A will be crashed if the duration of the project is reduced by 1 day, as the per unit cost of crashing the activity A is the least. All the activities are assumed to be on the critical path here. While crashing, if you end up saving time on a path, which is not the critical path, you will not end up saving time on the project. In the next screen, let us look into the impact of schedule compression. Different schedule compression techniques have different impact on the project. The impact of fast track leads to risk additions and increase in management time for the project manager. Crash leads to cost addition and increase in management time for the project manager. Reduced scope, on the other hand, saves cost and resources but increases customer dissatisfaction. Likewise, cut quality saves cost and resources, but increases risk. Resource reallocation does not add cost or increase risk. In the next screen, let us look into the other techniques used in scheduling. There are several techniques that are used in scheduling projects. What-if scenario analysis. In this technique, questions like, what if a particular scenario changed on the project? Would that produce a shorter schedule? Are put forth to understand the impact of specific changes on the schedule. The goal is to produce a realistic schedule. Monte Carlo analysis. In this method, a computer simulates the outcomes of a project, making use of randomly generated values that map the probability distribution of the input variables. Together, these two techniques are called modeling techniques. Resource optimization techniques. These are also used to produce a resource-limited schedule. Resource optimization results in more stable number of resources used in the project. Critical chain method. This technique develops the project schedule that takes into account both the activity and resource dependencies. In the next screen, let us look at the last process in project time management. Control schedule. Control schedule is concerned with determining the status of the project schedule, determining that the project schedule has changed, and managing the actual changes as they occur. The project schedule is an important input to this process. It is the actual schedule that needs to be controlled. Scheduled data contains information related to the schedule that may need to be monitored in order to take actions to bring the project back on schedule. Project calendar describes the working hours and days for the project. Work performance data has information like which activities have started, their progress, and which activities have finished. The other inputs of this process are project management plan and organizational process assets. The key tools and techniques of this process are the performance reviews. Performance review is measuring, comparing, and analyzing schedule performance such as actual start and finish dates, percent complete, and remaining duration for work in progress. The other tools and techniques include resource optimization techniques, modeling techniques, schedule compression, leads and lags, scheduling tool, and project management software. In development schedule process, these techniques are used for the first time to develop the project schedule, whereas in control schedule process, These techniques are used to update the project schedule. The key output of the control schedule process is the work performance information. This is represented in the form of schedule variance, SV, and schedule performance index, SPI. As a part of the control schedule process, the project team will generate forecasts, likely schedule for forthcoming activities, and project as a whole. The other outputs include organizational process assets updates, change requests, project management plan updates, and project document updates.
If you are looking to become a skilled project manager, have a look at the postgraduate program in project management by Simplilearn.
There are 47 processes in project management, grouped into 10 knowledge areas and mapped to 5 process groups. In this lesson, we will look at the 4th knowledge area, that is, project cost management and its processes. In the next screen, let us understand the concept of project cost management. Project cost management involves activities like